There's no water. I'm 4 days away. I might. When I arrived, the doctor said, if you arrived here a few hours later, you would have slipped into a coma. It's impossible. It can't be done. People have attempted. People have failed. People have nearly died. The sand blizzards, the snowstorms, the drunken nomadic drifters, the steep ravines, the stagnant water. I'm going to die out here in the desert. That's it. He told us to get down on our knees, put our thumbs behind our ears. I roundhouse kicked a Tibetan master.
Welcome back to the Atypical podcast, everyone. We are here for a very special episode, a very, very special episode. We're not in our usual setup. We're in a studio, right? First time, because we've got a guest on for the first time. Actually, of course, you got Anza, Jay, Massam, and Harshu, like always. But today, with us today, we have a multiple world record setter. That's right, setting, not breaking, setting, all right? So it's different, all right?
It's more brownie points.
Yeah, it's more brownie points. It's more brownie points. Yeah, he's walked from the east to the west of Mongolia through, snow, desert, mountains, you name it. Livelihood stolen from him with solar panels, you name it, all the stuff. Near-death experiences is something you're going to come across a lot in this episode. He loves doing that for some reason. He then trekked from the south to the north of Madagascar, 8 highest peaks, trekked them all. Point, Malaria, you name it, and then River Yangtze, 4,000 miles, 352 days. So there's a lot to get through this episode. But yeah, Ash Dykes, welcome to the Atypical podcast.
Quality. Yes.
Welcome, man. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I apologise again for being 45 minutes late because of the damn bicycles. Do not hire the Santander bicycles.
But yeah, man.
That was a good intro.
Cheers, man.
That's pretty much. You don't need me now. You set it up.
No, he's pulled everything in that.
He's been prepping that for 3
Yeah,
months.
you've done. Yeah, and I think that is the first. I think that's the first intro where someone has actually said setter. You're right. I don't think any. They always say record breaker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But not
we do our
setter,
research,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, like that.
A bit
I
too
like
much,
that.
maybe. But yeah, we just wanted to start with quickfire questions. Get loose,
Sure.
have some fun.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to start it off.
Let's do it.
All right, first question: your favorite UK snack or drink?
Oh.
Please don't say Prime.
Yeah, definitely not. Salt and vinegar Pringles.
It's a good man.
Right.
A good man.
Peanut butter on toast. Would you class that as a snack?
Yeah,
Right,
definitely.
and cheese on toast with Worcester sauce.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Alright.
love that.
I've never tried Worcester
No,
sauce.
neither
you
have
know.
I. Not,
you
I've
need-
tried it. I've never tried it.
Try the
on
crisps.
toast. Yeah,
They're nice.
Yeah,
they're
right.
great. They're great.
Have it on cheese on toast and beans on toast. Worcester sauce. Oh, it's so good.
Beans on toast is a classic.
Beans
Yeah.
on toast is good.
Right.
Can't go wrong, man.
With chili, put some chili in it, spice it up. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
I feel tropical. I'm more like, oh, yeah. It's only beans on toast.
All right. Favorite hobby?
Favorite hobby has to be either skydiving, Muay Thai, scuba diving, or if you just break it down to where I'm not abroad and I'm just sort of at home, it's going to have to be training.
Training.
Training I do for the fitness of it, but
Yeah.
it is a bit of a hobby. I do enjoy it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first
Can't relate.
4 weeks. Yeah. I wish.
That's a great hobby to have, really.
I can't ride a bike. That's me.
At least you won't get rinsed by Santander.
That's true. Favorite TV show or movie?
Favorite TV show or movie?
Yeah. We know you're a fan of
You
Lord
mentioned
of the Rings.
Yeah.
Lord of the
Avatar.
Rings? Avatar? Yeah, they're good. I think it has to go movie though. It has to go to the beach.
Really?
The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Wow.
sick film. That's
Yeah.
insane, yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, when I was about, I must have been about 15, 16, sort of thinking of travels, and my mate who was slightly older than me, he said, watch The Beach, and that will make you book your flight. And I watched it, and he just said, it was one of those movies where maybe it's not my favourite, but it was the most impactful. It was the most inspiring. Where he flies from the US to Thailand. He's on a road called Koh San Road, which is crazy, in Bangkok. And he says that everyone travels thousands of miles just to wind up doing the same damn thing. And he was showing he was going into hostels and they were all just watching movies. They were travelling on coaches overland at night time with the curtains drawn, watching movies. And I just remember thinking, fuck yeah, when I go travelling, I am... the party scene is about it, I'm about it. I did enjoy that. But when it came to the travelling, I very much took those words seriously, as you can tell.
Yeah. That's good. We will get into that. I want to know how you compare your Thailand experience to how it's set in a movie where it's obviously dramatized and stuff. So
Yeah,
that'll be
yeah,
good.
no, I got you. Yeah, that'd be good.
Go for it, Hashi.
Yes, we've got here favorite sport.
Favorite sport?
Yeah, and also another sub question: your favorite team as well, if you got one.
Okay. That's such a difficult one. I've been a guy that was always into sports, like playing sports when I was younger. Football, rugby, in the
Yeah.
athletics team, you know, all of that stuff. Loved it. But, yeah, but there was never any team necessarily that I supported or sport that I watched
That's fair,
closely. I think boxing, UFC, and Muay Thai.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But
Yes.
the Muay Thai, I don't follow as much anymore because I'm not in Thailand. It's a little bit harder. But the UFC, yeah, I love
We're
love
going to go into
it.
that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
He's probably going to zone out at that part.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
other two will
man.
go down into- who's your favourite fighter then?
My favourite fighter. Oh, there's so many.
There's literally so many.
There's so many, but I'm gonna have to go for. I'm gonna have to go by 2016, I think it was, or 2017, which brought me closer to the UFC, and that was McGregor. Not the best fighter, but I think that was at the peak where I was just like, okay, I'm getting more interested in the UFC now.
Yeah.
You know, I was already following, but I don't know. There were some great fighters, obviously, but John Jones was a big one.
Yes.
George St. Pierre, I loved watching, but then when McGregor came along, something just shifted in the UFC,
dynamite.
and it just went high, didn't it? You know?
He changed everything. He took it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
That 13 seconds, that left hand turned around the world. So that was,
man.
for sure.
Yeah,
Gives me
crazy.
goosebumps every time.
Yeah.
Watch
Trust
it.
me, man.
Awesome.
Hamza's got a great George St. Pierre accent.
Okay, first, no,
You have to do
I've
it now.
never done a George
You
St.
have to
Pierre
do it
accent
now.
ever.
I gotta hear it.
I can't remember what he sounds like. You're not doing this to me. You will pay me in advance. If it comes up later in, I'll bring it. I'll bring it to you.
Are you intoxicated?
Android, iPhone.
iPhone.
Come on, thank you, bro.
Yes.
That's just the
All
wrong
of these
answer.
are Android
Wrong
bankers.
answer.
Oh no! Oh no!
What would be your death row meal?
Ooh.
Oh,
Beans on toast.
yeah,
Worcester sauce.
yeah. I think it has to go. Maybe chicken masman curry or chicken tikka masala.
Yes. Come on.
Keeping it
Staple dish of the
cultural.
UK.
Yeah.
Staple
I
dish,
love
yeah.
I love curries, and I know that's so bad for me to say tikka masala.
You
But,
got two Indians and two Pakistanis.
yeah,
Yeah, like, come on.
yeah,
By the end of the episode, it'll be fully.
Yeah, so last Amazon buy.
I think it was something boring actually. We've got this very narrow in our kitchen because I've recently moved to London. We've got the a drawer for the cutlery for the knives and forks.
Sure, yeah.
And it's super narrow, so we couldn't find anything that fit this
Oh,
narrow
right,
drawer.
right.
And so that was the purchase, a little cutlery holder
Yeah.
in the drawer.
There you
Yeah,
go.
nothing exciting.
Yeah, definitely not exciting.
This one's a little deeper. It's
Yeah.
what is your favorite memory off the top of your head?
Oh,
What's the first thing that
God.
comes to your mind? Because you've done so much more than
Yeah, that's
like
difficult.
The layman. Like,
That
you've
is
seen a
that's
lot.
too hard. Too hard. Favorite memory?
Or even the first thing that comes to your mind, if that's easier. Like,
What's the first thing that comes to my mind? They all just like come in at the same time. It has to be something from one of the 3 world first records, I think, either in China, Mongolia, or Madagascar. But then saying that, when I'm out in the wilderness and I'm feeling vulnerable, it's actually the most mundane, boring times that I've spent back at home that really shine.
yeah.
Being warm, being dry, being hydrated.
Prime energy.
Yeah, my energy, belly full of food.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
And so yeah,
It's a mix, right? I
It's a
guess.
mix, yeah.
Yeah,
But there's
okay.
so many memories, and even from seeing the Northern Lights when I was working with Land Rover up there in Sweden was a memory. But then crossing the finish line or experiencing the whole fact that there's no such thing as silence in the middle of the Gobi Desert,
Yeah.
or being stalked by bears and just seeing, not stalked by bears, stalked by wolves, and just seeing a local in the distance who happens to be very warm and welcoming and invites us inside. And then we've gone from shit scared to, and minus 20 to now just being in this this white felt tent in the middle of the mountains, just sipping on some chai, like their
Mhm.
tea,
Yeah,
just being warm and just being, feeling safe and appreciating the little comforts like that,
Yeah.
for the little moments. So lots of these different sort of memories come flooding in, I would say.
Yeah, it's very
So
humbling as
hard
well.
to, but then, memories with my girlfriend as well. It's so hard.
I had to get that in.
Forgive me.
All right, what was worse then, malaria or the Mongolian heat stroke?
Oh, that's a good one. I think in terms of severity, maybe the Madagascar one was worse because...
Did you feel worse, or in retrospect?
I felt worse in the Gobi Desert.
Right.
Because my mindset was a case of, there's no water, I'm fucked, I'm 4 days away, I might die. That was but with malaria, I didn't know what I had. I was just walking through the jungle, getting worse and worse. And then it was only when I arrived, the doctor said, if you arrived here a few hours later, you would have slipped into a coma. And that's when I realised, fuck, I was probably closer to death with malaria than in the Gobi Desert.
That makes sense.
That's insane, man.
But
That's actually crazy.
in terms of pain, I think the fucking Gobi Desert. And I say that all the time. People ask, what would you... It might be one of your questions. Extreme heat or extreme cold? And
It
it's
was.
I'll answer that after. Come to that.
So what do you prefer in terms of enjoyment? Being on a trip solo or more of a group expedition?
I think a group expedition. There's benefits to being alone. I'm quite a positive guy, so when I'm out there, I don't have anyone sort of negative influence or, if there's someone being a fucking Mardy bum, I can. You can't block that out because they're there with you.
Yeah.
You say morning and they don't reply morning back because they've not had their fucking morning coffee. You're just like, that's petty, isn't it? And then that annoys you.
Yeah, for sure.
brings it down.
But then I do believe in the saying, happiness is only real when shared, because I have experienced that too, and it's always good to share those experiences with someone else.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
Hot or cold?
Love it. There we go. I predicted it. I think I've experienced both, and on my recent trip following the Great Wall of China, which is crazy because it wasn't a world first, it wasn't a mission. It was something for TV where I was stupid and said, yes, I will swim across that river for like 300 to 500 meters, 20 minutes almost in this cold river.
Wow.
Air temperature was -12.
Okay.
It was a stupid thing to do, but I thought, well, I've walked the Yangtze. This is only a little swim, and I've got a film crew with me, so I'm safe. And so I swam across it, and holy shit, my body just something happened that I hadn't experienced before, and I was shaking. My vision was going. By the time I got up and they pulled me back onto the boat, I couldn't dry myself. Sounds like I'm hitting on them. I'm not. I had two girls there and they needed to dry me, and then they were trying to tow this guy who was there on a sheep raft, and I was like, fucking forget the guy. He's got a paddle with him. He can paddle his way back. Leave him, ditch him. And they took me back, and I was shaking. My whole body was red, other than my face, because my face hadn't touched the water.
Wow.
And at that point, I couldn't find my way to the bus. A guy literally had to throw another towel over me and drag me to the bus. And from then on, I remember I was almost about to faint or black out, and I really had to fight it. I was shaking it. I was trying to wake up my body and stay alert. Vision was blurry, and I remember thinking, holy shit. And I was in a bus now. This was warm. And no one could be in there longer than like 4 or 5 minutes because it was too hot. And I had hot water, and I was spilling all over me trying to drink it. And I remember thinking I probably skipped stage 1, 2, and 3 of hypothermia.
Yeah.
When
sounds like it.
yeah. And that's when I realised, wow, so that can take you fast. But in the heat, yes, you become delirious, you kind of hallucinate, but you feel every bit of pain. You feel every bit of fucking agony. Like almost crawling on your fingernails across the desert floor, just feeling how dry your insides are. Like your organs drying up. And there's with hypothermia, when you die of hypothermia, the victims of hypothermia are found with their hats and gloves and scarves off, because before they die or before they sleep, they start thinking that they're warm,
they're really warm,
And so there's kind of this euphoric feeling to it. You don't get that in the desert. You do not get that in the desert. You feel every bit of pain.
Wow.
So I think if I was going to die in the heat or cold, I think I'd prefer the cold.
That's crazy.
That's fair.
It could maybe take you quicker though.
How did you train then with swimming in those waters? How did you train for them?
with that one, I didn't.
He didn't realise he was doing it.
I was just an idiot. There was a big film crew there. We were filming lots of cool, crazy shit, and I was just like, I will do this, and I will be fine.
Would you do it again?
No.
Peer pressure, kids, don't.
Yeah. I would at least ask for a dry suit, a wetsuit, should I say? Yeah. But that was silly. I remember at night time googling like, can you die on the Afro Effects? And
Wow.
you can.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, fucking hell, hopefully I wake up tomorrow morning.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. Well, the next one was going to be a sandstorm or blizzard, but you kind of answered that, I guess, in the previous question.
Yeah, kind of, but
But
they
it's-
are both kind of different as well.
If
The
you had to-
sandstorm's very painful. You've
Mhm.
got to fully cover up because it chucks up sand, grit, and even stones, so it's fucking painful if you don't get in. So in Mongolia, when I was crossing the Gobi Desert, I had that trailer, a big heavy trailer behind that I was pulling, and so I had to act fast, dig out the clothes in the trailer, wrap up my face, wear an actual, like a ski mask, if you like, gloves, the lot. And there were times where I was just too slow, where the desert storm hit fast, and I felt it's like this whipping.
It's like 1,000
sandpaper.
pins, just
Right,
like,
yeah.
because I was in
Pretty
Jordan
much.
and it was like hella windy, definitely no sandstorm, but the sound was picking up and I was wearing shorts and
And
it was
you
just like
feel
just
it,
whips
right?
across you and it was
Yeah.
like, and I was like, I don't want to be in a sandstorm.
You suffered a gust of wind.
Yeah, I suffered a gust of wind. He
You
suffered a
suffered a
sandstorm.
sandstorm.
And I was like, like gust of wind. I was like, that's kind of it's a bit
Yeah,
tickly,
right,
that is.
right.
Imagine what that's like a strong wind.
100 times worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100 times worse. Yeah.
Fuck. I remember just being in this community at another time, which I was thankful for. And you see all of the locals not necessarily panicking, but getting ready to like bunker down. And I remember them just calling me in, like, leave the trailer. They ran in and they closed the door. And then midway through, they just opened it to look out, and you just see all of the sand and it's
Wow.
this noise as well. And then poof, they close it. It's like, whoa, thank God I'm not out there again.
That's insane.
That is a proper movie moment. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The all sensory things are just going off at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
with the way
good.
they open the door, it's a door. It's still a tent. You know what I
Right,
mean?
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's a wooden sort of a felt tent. I mean, you've
Yeah.
probably seen
Yeah.
on you. And the way they just open it, you see it, and they close it, and then you realise actually these things are pretty sturdy. But sometimes they're not so sturdy that they do get blown over. Mental.
Wild.
Most memorable or funny school moment?
School moment.
Taking you back.
Oh, there's so many. I didn't really enjoy sort of the education system, but I did enjoy it. Yeah. But I
makes
did.
one.
There we are. But I did have a good social life, mucking around with my mates, and there was so many. We would just piss around, see who could get who kicked out first, kicked out of the class.
Jesus.
We were talking about this today as well.
Yeah.
Like some people from our school did the same thing. We had like
Yeah.
a competition, you can get the most detention.
Yeah,
There were
yeah.
100 plus at some
Yeah,
point.
right. And it was
Shout out
always
you lot.
me that got. It must have been something on my face, like that the teacher didn't like. But I would always get kicked out. But then I'd be outside, like, the fingers all looking back in on them and then making them laugh, and they would come and join me then outside, and I'd be like, "Hey!" So it has to be that. But
All right. What's your favorite country that you visited so far?
my favorite country so far has to be Thailand, Mongolia, China, or Madagascar. I have to. It's annoying because Mongolia, China, and Madagascar, for rightful reasons,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
they're just so different. So it's hard not to include the three of them. I think Madagascar, because 80 to 90% of all plant life and wildlife found on the island is found nowhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So it's literally one of the most unique countries on the planet. Mongolia, because I think if you want to know what the world looked like thousands of years ago, Mongolia is that place. I walked over 8 days, covering decent mileage, didn't come across another human. Which in this day and age, that's hard to do, right?
Yeah.
And then China, because I think when people think of China, they think of the big cities, but there's so much more to it. And I think I felt more vulnerable in the west of China than I did solo in Mongolia, because it was just so wild. Just barely anyone up there. And it's so diverse along the way, constantly changing. And then Thailand, just because it's great fucking fun and it's super cheap. Have you been to any of those countries?
No.
I don't think any of us have been to those countries.
Okay.
I've had an
Yeah.
obsession with Mongolia for years.
Yeah.
For
Yeah, really?
years at this point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one day I will, for sure. But
Definitely.
That's definitely the one that sticks out of those,
Yeah.
for sure.
I would
you'd
love
love
to go
it.
to China. I think that would be the one out of the three.
Yeah, nice.
I'm weird in that sense, but I just want to drop me off in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, that's where I probably am at my
His
happiest.
his dream destination is to be in a yacht in the middle of a random ocean.
Oh,
And you
Just a
can't
boat.
swim.
Don't say yacht. That makes it sound like
Sorry,
a McGregor.
sorry.
or a
Okay, a
Lamborghini
boat.
yacht.
A boat.
Just a boat.
A
But
dinghy.
either way,
Dinghy.
he doesn't know how to drive a boat. He doesn't know how to swim, but he wants to be dropped in the middle
I'll
of nowhere.
learn before
man.
I go. Just like in the middle of the pitch black. Yeah. I think that would just be for like a day, for like a week.
no light pollution.
I think
Just
it'd be
you
awesome.
and the sea and the fucking.
Because you get
stars.
bioluminescence as well with like plankton and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Have you seen? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it not in person.
Yeah,
no,
got you.
but like,
You do that. There's that in Thailand. You can go scuba diving, and when I was nighttime scuba diving,
Yeah.
we would drop down on the seabed. You can be relatively shallow. You don't need to be deep. But I think we were about 30, 40 meters, and we just put the torch on our chest. And as soon as you just like move your arm like this underwater, it just shines electric blue from the
Yeah,
plankton.
that's really cool.
That's
Crazy
beautiful, man.
experience. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
A bit of an emotional last question. Last time you cried?
Last time I cried.
Yeah.
It's funny because my girlfriend's still mad that she hasn't seen me crying. It's been 2.5 years. She's like, I will see you cry one day. It's like, well, don't say that because we don't want it to be for like something really bad. Someone's just passed and she's like, cry for me. I think the last time, I think I actually got a little bit teary-eyed in Mongolia.
Mm.
And I think that was the last. So that was when I was 23.
That's a while ago.
that's
No chance you haven't cried for like the last day.
I honestly, I swear,
It's hot outside. I'm crying right now, bro.
the English sun hits different. I'm telling you, man.
yeah.
Yeah, Mongolia heat, that's not
The English sun is crazy.
It's crazy, bro.
Yeah, I just remember being with a local community that was super hospitable, really friendly. And I'd been like a week or almost 2 weeks without coming across many locals. And I remember being with this family, close-knit community, and I stayed the night there. I had a wash, and the wash was literally me almost butt naked, just with my boxer shorts on, in a tin. And the mother of the hut would pour warm water from a kettle over me. And I would just be crouched down, just washing like that, like proper old school. But I think it was just my time with them that when I set off, it was windy, it was -20, I was about 3,000 meters altitude, I was pulling the trailer up the mountains, and I remember thinking I still have about 60 days left of this. And I remember thinking, when am I going to, how long will it be again before I come across more people like that who were super friendly and would invite me inside? And I knew that there were wolves up ahead, I knew of the dangers. I had never done anything like this before, and I think it got overwhelming. And as I was walking, being battered by the wind, I think I would remember being upset, and there were probably a few tears then. And that's the last clear time, but there's got to be. It's got to be.
How old are you at the moment?
32.
That's
in the
8
last
years ago.
decade.
Yeah.
There has to
Gotta
be
be
something.
Has to
I
be.
get teary-eyed watching movies.
Yeah, if I think of anything, I will drop it in. I will drop it in.
I've got it. Mid-episode.
I was going to ask that in terms of like if you ever like cried during your journeys and stuff, because it didn't seem like you really like broke, so to
No.
speak. Obviously, because you ended up finishing it, right?
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you ever got to that point, because it did seem like in the Mongolia, I watched the thing on Prime, the documentary, and it did seem like that was probably one of the worst. Because I feel like Madagascar was a bit different. It was more frustration.
Yeah.
But Mongolia was like desolate.
Yeah, it
in a
was.
way. So yeah, I would have.
It was. It did get to me. It was almost like in the Gobi Desert, I just didn't have the energy to cry.
All the water in your body.
Those tear ducts are dry.
I couldn't even sweat. Yeah, so I do remember that was the most frustrating. But I do remember after catching malaria, with that, I wasn't upset. I was just, I think it was the pills that I was on, the medication in order to clear the malaria that I had. They did something, they really sort of turned me negative, dark, borderline
you said you
evil.
took doxycycline. Isn't that like just normal antibiotic? Because I took that a little while back. And I was like, that's just doxycycline. That's just a normal antibiotic. Unless it's like a different.
It might have been a really high
it
dose,
might-
though.
Yeah,
probably,
maybe a
yeah.
higher dose, but it covers you 80% from malaria, but there's still that 20%.
So are you saying did it change your hormones?
It wasn't that, it was once I reached the doctor and she gave me new medication to fight it.
Right.
It almost lasted, It took about 8 days for the malaria to be fully cleared out of my system. But I remember for 3 or 4 of those days being like really angry, really frustrated, evil thoughts, hated the locals, hated the country. But it was almost flipped. I used it as fire. It wasn't a case of get me the fuck out of here. You know, I still, this was 1 month into a 5-month journey, and I still wasn't thinking of stopping or quitting. It was more of like I'm going to fucking smash this expedition, conquer this island, and then bounce. You know, after a few days, I came about and I was normal again. And, you know, I loved the locals, and I really do. And the island, I love it. But I just remember those weird thoughts, dark thoughts that I had.
I'm going to get into that.
Yeah, and I think in that time I did lose probably about 10 kilograms, I guess.
And you go into these pretty lean, right? Like your body composition a little bit, but you still, I think you lost like 12, 13 kilos
in Mongolia.
Yeah,
Yeah. With Mongolia, I put on a little bit more mass.
Yeah.
So I was bigger with Mongolia.
Sure.
Madagascar, I remember I was drastically losing weight anyway, just because the temperature down south was about 35 degrees Celsius already, you know, with a big, heavy, I think it was 30 to 35 kilograms, the rucksack to begin with. And you've got to cover up as well, because it's, so you're on a beach, you set off from a beach, and you're walking in those temperatures with a shirt on, a hat, collar popped, long trousers, trainers, you know, walking in the sand along the beach at that temperature with a heavy rucksack. And it just wasn't pleasant. You would think shorts and t-shirts, you know, flip-flops or sandals, you know, none of that.
Ditch the rucksack would be much nicer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, get a donkey down there to help you carry it.
Also, was that the quickfire?
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Well, we got a little gift for you. And
okay.
From our cultures and stuff, when a guest comes, you know, you should treat them like a king or a queen, so to speak. That's the way our culture.
I love it.
So there was something you said in your book, which, and hopefully
We all picked up on
it. Better
we all
still
picked
ring
up
true.
on it. If it doesn't, then we're taking it back. But you mentioned when you were in Mongolia that they gave you samosas and green chili sauce, which was your favourite.
Yeah.
And considering we're Pakistani and Indian,
Oh, hey.
some.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
Anyway, but
Yeah, appreciate that. Samosas and
green
Green
chili sauce,
chili,
yeah, it's like
yeah.
chutney.
You know what
yeah.
this
Homemade.
this is
My mum
chili,
made
yeah,
it,
it's spicy.
Yeah.
Oh, can I?
It wasn't too crazy.
You could try some now.
But
Taste test.
yeah,
Oh, I love that smell. Oh man,
yeah.
man.
I'll pop it in the fridge, obviously. Don't want to roast it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
appreciate
but,
that. That's
but yeah.
if you
thought
got,
it's-
I will try some now if you got.
Yeah,
some.
yeah,
Go
yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Go for it.
Have
Do
you
you
got
have any
little-
like tissues or anything?
We don't.
There might have been in Sainsbury's.
Do you have any in the
Should I just
peanut
dip my
butter
little fingers
place?
I don't think we got
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
it's cool.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
This is a taste
Live
on his
reaction.
mum's cooking, by the way. It's not his cooking,
Oh,
so
I love that.
There you go. Mum,
man.
good job.
That is good. It's funny because my girlfriend always says I've burnt my nerve endings on my tongue, like my taste buds, because everything I want spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chili, everything. And in Madagascar, well, you're right, you read it in the book, but in Madagascar, I bought. It actually looked like that. Appreciate that, and thank your mum as well for appreciate that very much. But yeah, in Madagascar, I remember buying because it's a poor country down south of Madagascar, so all as you're getting is just rice, really. Rice, chicken, if you
Yeah.
can, but the chickens are super skinny, so there's no meat on the bone, so it's just bones, and the Malagasy, they eat the bones. And I remember it just being flavourless, so I bought like a tub of chili, it was fucking hot chili, and I would just add that to the rice, chili rice, the whole south of Madagascar pretty much. Loved it.
You need to do whatever you can, right? Just
Yeah.
add some taste buds back into what you're eating, especially if you're essentially eating the same thing for extended periods of time.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But I add chili to everything. I love chili.
Yeah, we love chili too.
Really love chili. We have to, innit? We have to.
It's in our blood,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
We don't love what it does to us after.
right. Can you handle it? Are you good at handling it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, love chili, man.
That's tame. My mum, like in my house, my mum and me just go crazy on the chili,
Yeah.
and everyone else just kind of tame her. So that's like about as tame as it gets.
Got you.
Yeah,
Well,
we go crazy.
next
chili.
time, next round, next podcast that
Yeah.
we do, let's have a competition.
we did it back in school. Do you
All right,
remember?
let's do it.
Let's do it.
Right, we'll get the
Like
chili
fucking
sauces
hot
out.
chili wings, chili sauces or something, samosas, and then let's see how hot we can
On
go.
a day,
like
on a
that.
day, it's
That'll
not
be
30
fun.
degrees outside.
Yeah, on a hot day too.
You don't want to add to the excitement?
Alright, awesome. So then let's start at the beginning then. Let's start take us back to Old Colwyn. What was that like growing up? Your childhood? How's that
Yeah.
shaped?
the childhood was good. You know, Old Cohen. It's a sleepy town, lazy town. You know, no one really knows Old Cohen. Have you been to North
No.
Wales? It's nice. It's pretty. You're on the coast there. You've got the mountains. So Snowdon is about a 30-40 minute drive away. The biggest mountain in Wales. Forests. You know, there's a lot there for someone who likes the outdoors. But other than that, it's very hard to get ahead, hard to progress. It's not too many ambitious people come out of Old Colwyn,
Right.
and it's a bit more of a retirement place, so full of old people. I did used to call it the land of old. Because you go back to North Wales after being abroad, and that's it. But it's easy to stay disciplined because there's no attractive females. So you don't dick about. But that aside, it's a great place for training, you know, out in the mountains and whatnot. But growing up, I was just in, you know, a normal sort of upbringing, very normal. I don't come from a financial background, but a positive, loving, supportive family. I've got a younger sibling, an older sibling. My mum and dad, who are still married, they got together at age 16 and 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
they,
young.
That's mad. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And so, you know, good upbringing. And I remember from high school, I went on to college. And again, it's a local college called Llandrillo College. And I was doing an outdoor education course. Again, a good course. I liked it. But I think this did something to me where I realised I was more of a kinesthetic learner, something I didn't fully know or understand in high school, because I would just mess around in high school and, you know, just about managed to get the GCSEs to go on to college. And it was in this course I realised we were doing a lot of, you know, it was academics and theory and exams, but it was also a lot of practical elements to it. You know, getting your powerboat license, learning how to surf, learning how to rock climb, ice climb, all of this sort of good stuff. And I realised that I was very good at being hands-on, practical, and learning through this rather than being sat in a classroom with the teacher lecturing you, it just over my head. And I think it was on that 2-year college course that I was kind of thinking, right, I think I need to do something different and I need to stop following this sort of education system which has this sort of path that is good for many people but not good for everyone. And the rest of the students that were on that college course pretty much had it figured out. You know, they were going to university next or joining the military, and I just knew that wasn't for me. And again, taking it back to high school, you know, I was very athletic, very sporty, but not that adventurous, I would say. Liked camping every now and then, but I wasn't, you know, I was more athletics, you know, into football, rugby, all of that sort of stuff. But then it was on this college course where I realised that I could push myself physically, you know, and I do remember having college grants. You know, you get these grants to help support you so you can buy stuff for the college course. And the rest of the students spend their money on the right stuff, the good stuff. Outdoor equipment, waterproof jackets, expensive waterproof boots. And I spent mine modifying my car. I sprayed it black from red. I gave it a full body kit. Ooh. It had a big subwoofer in the back. You know, there was no room.
What was it?
You fully
It was a Renault Clio. It was a Mark II or Mark III Renault Clio. And and so all my money went towards modifying that car. So I would end up doing Ben Nevis and these extreme mountains in the winter in Scotland with Adidas overalls, you know, and football trainers. But I was still at the front of the line, sort of. You have where you call it leading, where you are first to create the footprints in the snow. It makes it easy for everyone, so it's always harder for the person up front. But the people, like the rest of the students, were complaining, tired or going too slow or complaining. And I was just like, look, let me go with my little football trainers on, with my thin socks, with my Adidas overalls, which was like super thin. And I just found myself being smiley, being positive, having a laugh, not taking things too serious. And then I was thinking, fucking hell, all these were like bitching and crying about this. I wonder how far I can take myself. That was just like a brief sort of seed probably planted. And then I realised I don't want to go to uni, I don't want to go to the military. I would like to travel the world, develop myself, grow, explore and learn about different parts of the world, different traditions, different cultures, but also learn about myself, how I handle myself in certain situations, certain scenarios. I believe men are created through facing adversity. and under extreme stress and pressure, they'll really find out what they're made out of. And I clocked onto that at a very young age, and I was just kind of like, well, how can I do that? And I was looking at the SAS, actually SAS reserves. Otherwise, you have to do a certain amount of years in the military, in the army, and then go to the SAS. And I remember passing certain physical exams for the SAS, and I remember the guy just saying, like, you are young, and I give this talk to everyone. You're young. Make sure that this is 100% what you want to do, because once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
And I remember that stuck. I don't even remember his name. It was just a brief phone call. I remember thinking, I don't really want to enter the military and be ordered what to do either. I was kind of a free spirit. But I did like the aspect of the SAS where they get to do these crazy sort of missions or expeditions abroad, and they get a certain skill set, which is sort of great for everything, survival and whatnot. And I remember thinking, what if I can do that myself? And again, that was just a seed planted. So it was almost like the physical attributes from being younger in school, pushing myself and being sporty, to then having this curiosity about the world and myself, to then having, again, that curiosity for the military and these sort of different missions. And ultimately, that much further down the line, and after many, many different things and adventures faced, that brought along these expeditions that I ended up doing organically, by accident, if you like. But I do remember thinking, right, because I'm not going to the military or university, I need to find multiple different jobs, which I was working in a fish and chip shop, as a waiter, as a lifeguard. I sold my Renault Clio.
It's a sad day. It's a sad day. I wonder what he's doing right now.
I didn't profit at all. I devalued the car, got rid of it.
Now it's just scrap football.
That was just in the scrapyard, yeah. And I remember investing in myself as well, so getting scuba diving qualifications, because now I was telling my friends the different plans. I was saying I'm going to trek the Great Wall of China, I'm going to eat tarantula, I'm going to do the world's highest bungee. I remember them thinking, like, yeah, that's great, but what then? I'm like, what do you mean, what then? The experiences that I have. And they were like, yes, but will we finished with our degrees or our masters and would have like found a career, and you'll just be traveling and you'll come back to square one, and everyone would have moved on with their lives and with their careers. And I was just like, damn, I need to make sure that doesn't happen. So I got scuba diving qualifications to enable myself to find work abroad and top up the funds as I travel. But the main reason for travel was to just explore opportunities, see what options are out there, because I know my careers advisor was wrong in giving me 10 different options. I was like, there's definitely more than it's a big world.
They usually are.
I think every career advisor says the same 10 things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Doctor, lawyer.
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah.
That's interesting though, because we come from Asian background. So for us, like, our parents, I think, and our culture, South Asian culture, Pakistan, India, that area of the world is very like traditional in that sense of school, uni, job, so on and so forth. So for us, taking, maybe you're an extreme example here, but even half that way, I think is it's not really plausible, to be completely honest. It's very rare, 1 in a million for someone from an Asian background to really have that opportunity, and for their parents to be supporting of it, which I think is the main thing. So I know you've always spoken good about that, about your parents being able to support you and pushing you the whole way, and you still work with your dad right now, right, with business, exactly you do. So that's something we can't relate to. As much.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, my girlfriend is Persian, so she's from Iran, and it's the same with her. It's a case of, with her, she had to go to university. She had to get the right qualifications to be able to leave Iran.
Sure.
And so that is a whole different ball game. And it's like, in the UK, we don't have to do that, but a lot of people don't realise that. And right now, the Brits, they will go the normal route, and it's not as high value as it once was, getting the degree, unless they're going to really stick at it. So if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor, you need there's certain things that you need to do in order to get that skill level or that well qualified, and I think that's like 7 years, isn't it, in university. So that's when it makes sense. But a lot of Brits, they go to uni and they don't know, and it's not even a lot of Brits, I think it's many people in general, right? And with me, I kind of saw ahead, and I knew I didn't want to take that route if I didn't know what I wanted to do. If I knew what I wanted to do, that would have been different, but I just I was clueless. And my parents supported that, not financially, but they were saying, look, the main thing for us is if you're happy, we're happy. We would prefer to see you risking your life but being happy about it and having a fulfilled life, rather than doing something you don't want and you're miserable about it, and we see your spirit die over time, but you're safe and you're making money and you have a house and you've got a mortgage.
Yeah.
They ate those words quickly.
Yeah, right, yeah. And then I took it to the next level.
I did want to ask about that, because I think, if I remember correctly, in your book you mentioned, was it your sister that studied criminology? So
Yes.
like even around you, you were surrounded by people taking a more traditional route.
Yeah.
Do you think you still would have gone down this path if your parents were not supportive?
I like to think I'm stubborn enough to do it anyway, but I think it definitely would have played on my mindset, right, on my spirit. I think if I didn't have their support, or they would have tried, not meaning to, but they would have said things that probably would have sat on my conscience and been like, they're right, maybe this is a bad idea. Or if they were very much against it, like, yeah, but what, there's going to be no opportunities and you're going to come back, and everyone would have moved ahead, kind of like my friend said at the beginning. Whereas they weren't like that. They were curious as to what I wanted to do and what I planned to do after travelling. But I told them originally that I was looking to travel for 4 years, get my scuba diving qualifications, work as a scuba diver, get my snowboard qualifications, work as a snowboarding instructor, in Canada, wherever it might be, and just travel the world doing that. And they saw how enthusiastic and excited I was, and I think they just enjoyed seeing me like that.
Yeah. And
so they thought, rather than try to shut it down and tell him he might not be earning good money in those jobs, let's just support it. And I remember my dad, we were in the in my back garden. I was 16 or 17 at the time, and I remember talking to him about it and getting excited. And he had this brochure with different locations, and he was pretty much part of it. They both were, but he was kind of like, look, let's create a mind map, and we can have the main goal as travel, and then it's a spider diagram, if you like. And he would just like put down, you need insurance, you need this amount of money, you need visas, you need to book flights, and we just created this big spider diagram of all of these different bubbles, things that I needed to do in order to make travels happen. And that's where he also put sell the car, and then said, put £1,000 or nearest offer. And I literally printed it out that day, put it on the car, had a bicycle in readiness for when if the Clio sold, and it did. And that was really useful, because I had never travelled before. I'd never been abroad alone, at that age. And so I was kind of like overwhelmed by it. And by breaking the goals down, it didn't seem overwhelming. Yeah. And little did I realise, but that day in the back garden with him, doing this sort of mind map and breaking down the goals to make it more manageable, to manage my expectations, that whole method I would take with me in order to save my life in the Gobi Desert, and in order to get Mongolia off the ground and Madagascar off the ground. This is always something that I went back to. And even when I was planning for Mongolia, and everyone was shouting, saying it's impossible, it can't be done, people have attempted, people have failed, people have nearly died, And I remember looking at the world map with my logistics manager, going to the Royal Geographic Society here in London, and breaking it down, saying, look, which one of these days is the impossible day? Because it was really getting to me. I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of doubt, because the last guy that attempted it was a soldier, desert explorer, and I was a Muay Thai scuba diving, a beach bum on an island, never been to a desert, and never had that training. And so by breaking down those goals, we realised every day was possible, as long as I had the right water and the right food. It's doable. Much bigger things and better things have been achieved over, of course. And so why can't this? And I just remember that falls back to planning that. And so that really helped, having their sort of supportive and positive attitude around me. And maybe it would have knocked my confidence, and potentially, I like to think it wouldn't, but it does matter what your parents think too,
Definitely does.
It seems like there's kind of a theme, which I realized while reading the book, of you constantly trying to prove people wrong. So it's interesting hearing your talk about the careers advisors of your friends, of like, you can't make this a living, which seems like an incessant theme throughout, where you're always trying to prove, even like the Mongolian natives like questioning you, like, really, you're going there? So it seems like a big driving factor behind most of the things you do.
That's a good point. Yeah.
With that, I was gonna say, is it like proving other people wrong, or is it like proving yourself right? Like, what's the mindset?
I
there?
think I get very excited with things, with things that can't be done.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and even with Mongolia, once I realized that it had been attempted, I didn't know it was a world record. I was going to do it anyway, even if 1,000 people had done it. I was just like, oh, it would be cool adventure. It doesn't need to be a record. It was only when I realized it would be a recorded first if I was to complete it. And then I saw the guy had attempted it, and I reached out to him, and he sent me the list of dangers. You know, the sand blizzards, the snowstorms, the drunken nomadic drifters, the steep ravines, the stagnant water. The list,
Keep going.
yeah, it went on, and it put me off. I was like, fuck this.
All right, this might be a very negative thing to say. Do you think he did it on purpose just to scare you away from doing it?
Yeah,
Because he was like, I can't do it. Let me see.
Maybe, yeah, because he did put on the end of that email, he said, "Incredible is the ability to continue no matter what."
Right.
You
And
mentioned that on the way.
and I remember thinking, what the fuck does that mean? That scared me. I had no idea what he meant. He was pretty much saying you have to be incredible to do this, and I thought, well, no one's incredible.
Yeah.
Therefore, he's saying you're going to die.
Sure.
And I just remember thinking, fucking hell, and that was it, done. I was like, let's look at Spain.
I was going to bring up that exact quote because I think, or was it Ripley who was the person that did
Yes,
that? Yeah.
Davin,
And
Ripley Davenport, yeah.
Yeah, and I mentioned you mentioned that in Mongolia as another driving factor of you remembering that line and thinking, okay, I'm going to get myself out of this situation. Is that still a phrase that resonates with you today, or have you put it in the past now?
I just want to say I appreciate the research that you've done. I love it.
We're just getting started.
Honestly, it makes the conversation, and people don't need to research. I just appreciate it because we can have this talk, and you bang on. You are right. I remember being in the desert and being on the desert floor and thinking, fucking hell, if I don't keep getting up from out of the trail and pushing on, I'm going to die out here in the desert. That's it. I have missed the point of backup. I have got 4 days. I'm rationing the last remaining dribbles of water. I'm already severely dehydrated, suffering with heat stroke. If I don't make it, I'm going to die. So it was do or die. There was no other option. And there was a time I was feeling sorry for myself. I was thinking of my friends, my family, down and out under the trailer for a good hour. And just to paint the picture, it's over 40 degrees Celsius. There's no natural shade whatsoever. No clouds offering some shade, no breeze. And it's like 17 hours of daylight, so the sun's out for a very long time. And I remember being in too much agony to think about going through this for another 4 days. But then, I think it was the realization of knowing that I was going to die if I don't push on. That shocked me. It was that shock of capture, if you like, and with that panic. And I think we all have that instinct. That instinct to survive. We all have that in us. And I trained hard for this. I visualized it. And then I remember thinking about Ripley. I remember thinking, what he would have faced. And at which point it would have been that he bailed. And have I surpassed that point already? And I remember I had surpassed the point. And that was already a little bit of motivation. But then I was thinking maybe it was, maybe this is my fuck up. Maybe I should have bailed before I let myself get to this point. And then I just remember that email. I just remember all the dangers. Honestly, even when I was fighting in Muay Thai, I would be running in like 40 degrees in Thailand with a rucksack, sweating buckets, thinking incredible is the ability to continue no matter what, repeating it. And then that came to mind, and I should... Did I ever reach out? I don't think I did reach out to him, but I think I should reach out if I can dig out his email.
Probably in his face, man.
Yeah. No, but I did
Who's
reach
incredible
out.
now?
Yeah, I did reach out, and he got back, and he said, he congratulated me. He said, "Congratulations. I like to think I was the angel." No, he said, "Congratulations. You proved that it was possible. I like to think I was the angel sat on your shoulder." And in a way, he did help me through it. Because that quote played on my mind over and over and over again. I was desert floor, looking under my trailer, in a pretty fucking big mess. And I remember thinking of that quote over and over again and trying to understand what he meant. Because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what he tried to mean by writing that, I didn't understand it. But I do remember thinking, okay, if incredible was a person, what would it do? And because I was so disorientated and delirious. You know, my mind was scrambled. It was almost like I wasn't in the desert alone. And I know that sounds, you know, superstitious to say, but it was almost like I was so delirious that I was personifying incredible, and I needed an idol out there to look to, a role model to motivate me. And it was almost like I could see something ahead of me, and it was getting out from under the trailer quicker than me, pushing on and covering further distance. And I remember thinking, right, 100 meters, 5 minutes under my trailer, 100 meters walking, 5 minutes. And if I keep breaking my goals down like that, relating it back to when my dad first taught me it, you know, maybe I can see the 4 days going quicker. And so whilst this figure, if you like, this imaginary thing was getting up, I was trying to keep up, I was trying to compete, and I wasn't. I remember him getting further ahead, but I remember thinking he would be getting out of his trailer now, and I would get out of my trailer. He would be walking maybe 200 meters, and I would try 200 meters, and he was like getting further and further away in my mind, but I wasn't letting him get out of sight. And in a way, by doing that and breaking my goals down, I did make it. And I remember dropping him an email when I got back home. I finally figured out sort of what he meant. Even though I may not have figured out, I used what he said, should I say, to help get me out of a near-death situation.
A negative into a positive. Like you did that with the, what you said earlier about malaria as well. The dark thoughts and using them as fuel to turn it into a positive. And
Exactly, yeah.
There's two things that come to mind. One is, there's some quotes that you had written down, and that you talk about a spider web, and there were some quotes you had written down on your wall that I managed to catch on a video I was watching, and just wondering how much they ring true to you still today. Can we talk about quotes and how they stuck with you?
Yeah.
So the ones that I saw there was just another day at the office.
Yeah.
Another one was fear nothing.
Yes.
And then there was another one which was what counts as developing a cheerfulness and quiet determination to keep going and never give up.
Yeah.
So how does that? I was on your bench before.
That's great.
Researcher. Analytical mind just going off. But like, you know, and your approach to breaking down problems, I think. We've talked about this before because we've done episodes on like anxiety and mental health and things like that. Check those out. But like, I always talk about first principles thinking, which is an engineering sort of mindset of breaking things down to its fundamental like aspects, and then working on each one of those to like paint the picture with every like a brushstroke at a time, sort of thing. So that's exactly what you're talking about there. But how do those quotes still, you know, ring to you today? They
ring very true still today. Always when I'm planning future stuff as well. And I've added even more to that now, you know, but those, I would wake up in the morning and see those quotes on the wall. I'd see the world map. I'd see my rough itinerary of the plan of how I sort of visualized my travels to be. Posters as well of different locations. And so when I woke up, these were a few of the quotes that I saw. And I think, I don't know, that like I never knew there was such thing as a vision board. Now I know, I've read the book, you know, The Law of Attraction.
Yeah.
But back then, I was just doing things that seemed to make sense at the time when I'd be waking up 4 o'clock in the morning to cycle through the rain into work, to sit on poolside, to lifeguard. And I knew that I would forget my why effectively. And so when I woke up, I saw that and I was like, I'll be in Fiji soon. You know? And then these quotes, I do think that they were still in there through very dark situations like that. And I remember being in Mongolia and thinking, I remember even planning Mongolia, thinking if I achieve this world first, I will be able to potentially turn this into some form of career because it's a first, you know. There's very few firsts out there, and if I don't, then it would have just been a cool adventure, cool experience, and I'll have to then maybe fly back to Thailand and become a scuba diving instructor, which doesn't sound bad, but you make about, I think it was about £300-400 a month, which out there is great, but. I do remember counting the pennies to make sure I could go from my current island, Koh Tao, to the next island, Koh Samui. And I remember thinking, I don't want to have to count the pennies like that.
Well, speaking of Thailand, then, you know, take us back to Koh Tao. Then I think Sairi Stadium, Muay Thai.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you mentioned you had a record there. What's your record then? Because I think you had eight arena and one stadium, right? So what was your record? It was
one stadium. I think it was over 8 now. I think it was 10 or 11 club fights. It depends what you class as club fights, because sometimes I think so. And it's funny because actually, even regardless of the club fights, there were some spars that I had which were way more brutal. Way more brutal. Well, the stadium fight was I won by knockout.
It was like a jab that knocked him out. Honestly,
I missed it. I missed him with my right. But the thing is with that, there's no health and safety in Thailand. And so the gloves that you're wearing
to 10 counts.
all of the padding has shifted to the side. And so it's pretty
Hammer
much
fists.
It's pretty much just bare knuckle. Yeah. And I remember it was 2 roundhouse kicks which weren't brutal, you know, they were testing the water, and then that left.
You were much bigger than him though. Like you could tell, like every time he threw that roundhouse kick, like it was pushing him back. Like, and then I think honestly it looked like a jab, which honestly knocked him down in the end. It looked like that genuinely.
Yeah, and it was funny because I think I blocked his kick with the wrong leg, but it's a good job I did, because that momentum, I almost in a way fell onto him with the jab in his face, right, you know. Yeah. And so it was one of those. Yeah. But I remember that was 12 seconds. Of the first round, and that was great. That was my first stadium fight, because that's when I had a crowd and all of the, all of my my staff from my instructor dive school was watching, and so that was good. But I remember the spars being brutal and the club fights being much worse.
What about the rest of the fights though? What was the records on that?
I never lost.
You never lost?
I never lost.
There you go.
I did in the spars, because then they put you against people with 100 fights and they can fuck you up. But in the club fights, I never lost. No.
Are you familiar with Rod Tang? He's obviously a famous Muay Thai fighter.
Rod Tang?
Rod Tang, yeah.
No.
You're not famous. He's nicknamed, I think his nickname is Iron Man, and he fights for 1FC. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, 1FC.
Yeah, 1FC. So he's their Muay Thai world champion. Him and I think Haggerty was a British guy, right?
Okay.
And he's a savage. Right?
Oh, I need to look him up. I'm out of the whole Muay Thai loop. I need to get back into it.
They had an event in the US with Mighty Mouse there as well.
Right,
Mighty Mouse
yeah.
In a one round Muay Thai, 1 round MMA, and they went back and forth, Mighty Mouse and Rod Tang. And Rod Tang's like, he's this legend, right? He's got like 200, 300 fights, and before he was like 16. Because you know how they do it over there in Thailand.
Oh yeah,
they go crazy.
Yeah. Like I was recently out in Thailand, AKA Thailand.
Yeah.
You know,
Mike
AKA.
Swick,
Yeah, Mike Swick. Yeah, I was with Mike. Yeah. And so I did a podcast with him in 2020. Yeah. So he said, look, when you're next in Thailand, drop by. We'll do Muay Thai. I'll show you around. And I did. I went there, and it was fucking awesome. Best camp in Thailand, I believe, 2 years running.
Yeah.
AKA, I think it's taken over Tiger Gym now.
Tiger Muay Thai. Yeah.
Tiger Muay Thai. Yeah. And it's funny because there was a guy there who was a bit of a savage, he was fighting. And this was he then had a stadium fight. And this was his 7th fight, but they put him against someone with over 300 fights.
They do that stuff by the time they're 12.
And honestly, he broke his he broke his leg kicking the guy. That's how hard this guy was. He fractured his leg kicking the guy with over 300 fights.
Happens to McGregor, happens to the best of them.
Yeah.
Chris White,
I would have said no. 7 fights going against 300. Like, who are you kidding? But oh man, I love it. I miss it. And
would you do it again in the UK? Maybe like
there's more Thai gyms around it. Yeah.
I would, and I have tried. I joined one London gym in Imperial Wharf. That's where I'm based, and they advertise Muay Thai, but they're not doing Muay Thai right now. So I was like, okay, now I've already paid.
I would
3 months in
assume
advance.
even here it would just be way different though, right? You don't get any of the culture of it being out of source.
No,
there's a Gracie gym, if you're familiar with Gracie in Shepherd's Bush, which do BJJ, and I think one of them is based there.
Okay.
I think there might be some around Islington, because I worked with a guy who's actually from Thailand.
Okay.
And he moved over from Australia, and he's into Muay Thai and stuff like that. So
got you.
There you go. One in Islington if you want to check it out. Around.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I do want to. My membership's running out, so I'm like, do I just renew the membership or do I bounce in? Because I do love it, and I do miss it.
There's definitely got to be some good ones.
Yeah.
It's London. There's big trainers.
Has to be. Sure. And going back to Wales, it wasn't like I was doing boxing in Wales before Muay Thai in Thailand, and I don't know. I got a different vibe. In Thailand, they're very respectful, so you can actually learn. They'll fuck you up if they want to fuck you. If you mess around, they'll know what to do. But I come back here and I go to Wales, and there's that, if I hit them too hard, they want to hit harder, and then there's that ego to them, and you're not really learning. I do remember the Muay Thai fighters out there, if I hit too hard, they just wouldn't like it, and then they just won't spar. You've seen with the pros, the UFC fighters, GSP as well. Yeah. He wants spars where he can learn, where he can play around. And I've heard rumours that if you hit him too hard, or if you try to, assert your dominance, he could fuck you up. But instead, he'll choose, I will not spar that guy again.
Disengage.
He was unique in the sense that he went and really studied each martial art individually. So he went to the trainer,
the Drunken Master.
Well, yeah, the Drunken Master. His French Canadian friend, but the one who used to train Pacquiao. boxing trainer,
Freddie Roach.
Yeah, so he trained boxing at Freddie Roach, and he trained, Muay Thai samurai. He went, probably Tiger Muay Thai. So he, that's really how he became really, really great. Because
that was true mixed martial arts,
and then
wasn't
it? Because he's such a mastermind, he found a way to blend it together in a way other people
and
can't.
He was unstoppable, wasn't
different.
He's great.
Probably on roids though.
hey, listen, that fight against
pre-USADA.
Oh yeah, that
like
one.
Nate Diaz said, all these mother.
Yeah.
That was a crazy fight.
I mean, I had a podcast with Matt. What's the guy that beat him again? Matt.
You were on UFC.
Yes.
With Matt Serra.
Matt Serra, that's it. That was a good fight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
got him back though. He won every fight he lost. I think he rematched him and he got him back.
Yeah.
True champion.
He came back, didn't he? He came back really good.
Yeah.
He did like decent damage in that.
Well, we're on UFC. Let's talk about UFC for a little bit.
Yeah.
So how much do you keep up to date with it like nowadays? Much?
I'm not as much, but I'm still aware of the big fights that go down and try to catch them.
You watched the John Jones fight?
I did watch
the big
that.
return. What did you think of him coming back to the scene?
I wasn't expecting him to dominate gone that fast, but
neither do we.
Yeah, we stayed up until 4 a.m. to watch it live. We made like a whole plan for it.
Did you watch it live?
Yeah, I did watch it live.
How long was the fight?
15 seconds.
Yeah.
No, it was like one round. Like 15,
it was something crazy.
It was a couple minutes,
something
crazy.
crazy.
Was it KO? Like,
no, he dragged him to the floor and just choked him,
and that was it.
Neck cranked him out.
Yeah,
different.
Done.
Yeah, Valentino lost.
He is the greatest of all time.
He is,
without a doubt.
Pico Jones.
Huh?
Pico Jones. Drug test.
Pico.
Yeah, he's got called
Pictogram.
Pictogram
worth of like.
It was like a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They said he was, and
yeah,
but he managed to get cleared. So
shit.
Well, everyone's just got to cry about it, I guess. But you can tell he's just on a different planet.
He's different.
And I think now in retrospect, if Izzy Adesanya ever went up, I think Izzy, come on the podcast. We love you if you ever see this. But I think
yeah, he would get slapped.
Against John Jones?
He wanted to come up. Izzy went up to light heavyweight.
He wanted to. I think he doesn't want that anymore, does he? Surely not.
So it's like
fucking hell.
You've done boxing and MMA, and Muay Thai, whatever.
Yeah.
But what would you say to the whole comparison between Tyson Fury and John Jones? There's a big debate going on right now about who
What
do you think?
John Jones.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think obviously boxing, Tyson Fury.
Yes,
but
of course.
In that combat where you can use
everything
and anything, like course.
Come on, man.
Yeah. And my brother, he's only young, but he's 6'2".
He looks like an absolute unit. I saw what he saw. He looked like a unit. I'm like, what's this guy on?
He's
What's
a
they
big
feeding
guy.
him up in North Wales?
Yeah, he's only 17.
He's 17.
6'2", and he's into boxing, so he likes his boxing.
Yeah.
But he came to AKA Thailand, and we had a gentle spar. And he just, despite his reach, he just couldn't get close. I just jack his legs up. I don't need to get close combat. I can, even with his long arms, my legs are longer, and hit the boxing stance as well with a foot. Whereas the Muay Thai, it's more square on. And he just left his leg there. And since then, he has been trying kicks on the bag and wants to just get better because he couldn't believe. He got back after. He was like, I can't believe how useless boxing was. And I went through the same experience after boxing in Wales. I went over to Thailand, and they just jacked my leg up. I had to take 2 days off scuba diving because I couldn't climb out of the ladder because I couldn't bend my leg. And you've got all that weight with the tank on your back. I couldn't, so I was just like, I can't die for a day or two because it was just like this big lump.
That's pretty cool that you've been able to also bring like your brother into things and him see you in your element. So is he starting to get more down the path of you as well? Do you guys do anything together or any plans?
Yeah, I think he's getting more and more like that. Right. He's very finance savvy, so he's money motivated. He's like my sister, my older sister. She's also very money motivated, and I was all about lifestyle and experience. I'm both now. I do invest, and I do like sort of 50% adventure, but 50% business as well. I love that side, but I didn't when I was 19. I was all about and I clocked on that life will go fast. Life is short, and you've only got this one life. So it was a case of, for me, I wanted to rack up as many experiences as possible, really get out there, test myself, see what I'm made of, see what this body's capable of doing, and travel the world, have different new experiences. And then at the end of my life, I'll be like, fucking, what a life. But then, about 4 or 5 years ago, it was a case of, in fact, in Thailand, when I was 22, 23, it was a case, I remember a friend of mine, Steve-O, he's older than me, he was about 10 years older, but I met up with him, he was in his 30s, and is this multi-millionaire, and I went from my little hostel in Koh Samui. We got talking, we were good friends. And then I went to his hotel, which was Arc Bar, and this big swimming pool, DJ on the bridge overlooking it. He's on his balcony. He's a boxer. He sparred Mayweather, all of these people, and he's skipping on his balcony. And I'm like nosing at his apartment, which goes in bar, and I'm like, fucking hell! I'm there counting my pennies to see if I can afford this. How much was it? It was £8 a night. £8 a night in this hotel that I was, the cheapest, nastiest hotel, and I was still hesitant. Ooh, £8, that's a lot of money out there. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do that. I need to find a way where I can mix sort of what I love doing, like my passion, my hobby, if you like, but I need to bring in the money too. And it was before Mongolia, it was before all of this. I didn't know how I was going to do it or what. I was just enjoying my life then and there as a scuba diver, as a fighter, and wait to see what comes next.
Well, before we get on to the big Mongolia, Madagascar, Yangtze, why don't we do a quick little run through of China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, Australia, Sri Lanka, India. The list goes up. One thing that was cool was I think you put up on your stories a little while back that your granddad's was in Pakistan for quite a long time, I think 15 years or something like 21 years, and then he got booted out because of an overstayed visa. Now he's in India. How did he end up there? What's going on? What's the story there? So that threw me off.
So he's a guy, he hates the West. It's a case when he comes to visit, we're like, here we go, because he just picks it, little things about the West that he dislikes. It's like, look, you're here for a week, just enjoy it, and then you're going back over there soon. Just enjoy being here. But this guy he's my granddad. He's my mum's dad. I have probably seen him 5-6 times in my life for periods of a couple of weeks at a time, maybe. And so I don't know him enough for him to really influence anything in me, but I think genetically I've got something from him, from the genes. He's a fucking wild man. He is. In Pakistan, he was living on someone's roof, the flat roofs.
Even I wouldn't live in Pakistan.
He was living in Karachi for 20 or 21 years on someone's roof. He's a poor man. He doesn't have money.
How did he end up there?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Just call up your mum right now. Yeah, on the pod.
I got asked the simplest question, Mum, on this podcast, and I couldn't answer.
His hatred for the West is so much.
It was a case of that. I think he winded up in Pakistan, in Karachi. He ended up really liking it, really liking the locals. Really loved the food out there, the culture, everything. He always sort of bigs up Pakistan.
Not India though. Did you hear that, lads? You had to go there only because they kicked him out because of the visa.
Yeah, and who let him in?
Well, that is true. There's that shift.
We let him in the first place.
I was going to say he loved Pakistan, everything, and then they kicked him out. And I think he overstayed his visa. I don't know how many years he overstayed, but it was enough whereby they were like, this is ridiculous, we can't kick him out, we want money from him. And then they realised he does not have any money. And then they interviewed him on one of the biggest TV shows out there, breakfast TV shows. And then my mum gets a call saying, we want you live. And she was like, what? No. And she ended up going, and Karen, my granddad.
She went?
No, it was live, so it was over Zoom or something.
Okay, got you.
And he was there saying, please, Tamarind, my mum's name, you must be there. This is about my freedom. They were accent as well. Yeah, he's picked up the accent. Yeah.
Wow, that's
great. And
we need to get him on the
we need to get him on. He's got a story.
Oh, it would be a 10-hour podcast. You would have to stay like, look, Karen, you need to go now.
Where does he live in India now?
He lives in Jodhpur.
Okay.
Right? Jaipur, Jodhpur.
Jaipur, okay.
Jaipur.
Okay.
Yeah, so he lives there.
Wow.
He's been living there the past 4 years, I want to say.
All right.
And it's funny because I swear he doesn't know how to use his WhatsApp or his Facebook. He must be 76.
Sure.
And so anyone he comes across, he tells them about me. And so I get messages almost
That's
every other day.
So funny.
And it's just pictures of them with my granddad.
You posted one of a random guy in India as well.
Yeah.
I was laughing.
Yeah,
So
he just meets everyone, and he's got a documentary made in Pakistan and now a new one coming out in India, whereby, again, he doesn't have money, but what he does is he goes to different schools, and he's a big environmentalist. He plants lots of trees, and he's all about educating the younger generation. So he's doing that in India, and he's looking to, I think it's this sacred temple that in Jaipur the locals have kind of let it overgrow. They're not looking after it as much, so he's really doing everything he can to clean it up, because I think it was just a reserve. It had like a natural reserve, like a pool or a spring, if you like. And so it's looking better and better by the day. But so he just spends his time doing that. But he's got some wild adventure stories from when he would travel with very little money as well.
Yeah.
I think he got a bicycle and left home at the age of 16.
Wow.
He would sometimes hunt, sometimes gather. I think in Romania, he almost died of hypothermia until a little old lady knocked
You took a lot.
Yeah, you literally took it.
So I think, although I don't know him fully, there's something in the genes, right?
Yeah. Bike, hypothermia, India.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a
Next is
trend.
like, he
Yeah.
actually tried Mongolia before I did.
Yeah.
He's Ripley.
He's
In your brain.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
but I would love to visit him one day in India. I've been to India.
Mm.
I love the place.
How's the Himalayas? Yeah, you went out first,
Stunning. Yeah, I travelled. It was very quick. India's a huge country, isn't it? Of course, and I travelled.
Yeah.
I think it was. I want to say a month, but I think it could have been 2 weeks. No, 3 to 4 weeks, I think. And it was Delhi. It was up to Shunigar. It was. We were staying on a boathouse on a lake there, overlooking the Himalayas.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Stunning. And then we went further up north. We were on the border of Pakistan.
Yeah.
You know that
Tell us
story.
about, yeah, we know about, we heard about,
Tell us about these border
Tell us.
forces.
Oh, that was
We
great
love
fun. High adrenaline at that time, but great fun. And it was me and my friend. We wanted to trek the Himalayas. We could see them. We were like, we need to take a few more hours and head right into the heart of it. And that guy was saying, yeah, I can arrange that for you. And we literally left, me and my friend, with a shoestring budget, like traveling all together. We really had to watch the money. And he was starting talking about paying for a permit to trek the Himalayas. I was like, I'm not paying. It's Mother Nature. Yeah. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he is trying to scam us for money.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, but I learned that he actually wasn't, and that you do need a permit to trek that area. And he was a good man. He was letting us stay at his boathouse, but I just didn't want to spend any extra money. And so I was saying to my friend, look, should we just go for it? And we told him, we said, we're just going to go for it. We don't need a permit. And he was like, no, you do need a permit. It's like, well, we're not getting one. And he was like, well, look, if you're going to go against my word, you've got the border between India and Pakistan, and the Pakistan army roam the border. And if they catch you illegally there with no permit, you're on your own. And I was like, a bit startled by that, of course. But I was like, yeah, you could be scaremongering us to buy that
no
permit.
joke, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. And we kind of left the morning of, shook his hand, thanked him, paid for our time in the boathouse. And as we left, he said, look, if you are serious about this, if you do come across the Pakistan army, he told us to get down on our knees, put our thumbs behind our ears, and say, I want to say, Allah Harigbi.
It might be like Pashto or Farsi up north, with like Afghan and Pashtun culture is a different line,
Right.
dialect compared to
Okay.
the West, which is Urdu Punjabi primarily.
Yeah.
across
Right.
Pakistan. So yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Do you get what
I don't- obviously-
I'm gonna guess it's like
approximate
Allahu Akbar if he's time to put hands
Yeah,
behind
so
his
Yeah.
ears.
when we do this in prayer, we say Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, before we start our prayer.
Yeah, that's what he's...
So
Say again.
Yeah, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. I
Yeah.
think it was that.
First podcast, we're breaking it down.
Sure
Yeah.
it was that.
Yeah.
Because
That
when we
would make
start
sense.
prayer, we do Allahu Akbar and then we commence it. So
So
if
would
you
that
say
have
Allah and Allahu, which is
Yeah.
coming out your mouth, then it's probably going to be that
Yeah.
God is the greatest. Yeah.
Got you. And he said that should prevent them from,
shooting you?
Yeah.
potentially. Yeah.
It's a wild
Well,
assumption.
Probably would not work.
The assumption is
They're quite the people of the north are very, very known to be amongst some of the most hospitable on the planet. A lot of travel YouTubers go to
Yeah.
North Pakistan, and it's beautiful, Karakoram and everything they have.
Yeah,
there.
right.
It's stunning, Gilgit and everything like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you got away with it. It's all right.
Yeah,
they
I
treat
think
foreigners
so.
well up there. The rest of the country, I don't know so much about. But up north, they're good.
Yeah, and the locals were, they were just amazing up there. We stayed with some guys living in the mountains eventually, once we ventured further up north, and they were amazing. They were amazing. It was this hut, and they gave us like our own room there. In the morning, they would bake bread right in front of us. It was like the pita bread. Would wish us well on our journey. We would tell them what time roughly we're coming back, and just a wonderful experience. But I do remember that day that we set off without the permits. There was a helicopter lower than us in the valley, and they clearly weren't there for us. But me and my friend were like, "Fucking hell, do you remember what he told us to say?" And I was wearing like bright red, so I remember taking it off and jumping into the bushes as it like just sort of was skirted by, and then we came out and carried on trekking.
What's that red dot?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what stupid colour to wear?
It's a bindi, bro.
A bindi. That red dot on his head is something else.
The sniper rifle is right in his head.
It's amazing though how like you've gone so many places and you've seen so many people, but a common trend that you might have seen is the people that have the least express and love the most.
Yeah.
Like that's so beautiful to see in your journeys and just in life, to be honest. Like it's a common theme.
Hands down. And I think there's something to learn there. And it's interesting. I remember most of these countries that I went to, but one that stood out where I actually thought deeply about it, because I was only 19 in India. But when I was 22, I offered out cash to the locals who would just let me stay in their gur. They've been really hospitable. I stayed the night. They've given me food. And so I just wanted to sort of reimburse for at least for what I've eaten, you know? And I remember them being slightly offended.
Yeah, it's literally an offence, like to.
Yeah, and when I spoke to my logistics manager, well, I had two, but when I spoke to my local one, he said, "Yeah, no, it's an offence because, in a way, you're kind of saying you're richer, but the locals here believe that they're richer in life than you are." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And it was like, "Well, they have all of the land. They have no fences. They can go wherever they like." They can do whatever they want. They're not told what to do. They're happy because they've got their family. They've got food. They're rich because they've got their yak or their horses. And so they're in a better place, they believe, spiritually than you are. And I was just like, I fucking love that. I love that.
It's
and
also
too true, right? Too true.
Yeah,
100%. I think it's also to do with, sorry, and I was just going to say, it's also to do with like, how like Hamza said earlier with like, you know, us giving you some more say and whatnot. It's also just like when you have a guest, you're a king. Yeah, you're a king.
Yeah.
And it's like to be treated at your, you know, however you would like, and so that you're comfortable and you're happy.
Yeah.
So like taking money from that would just be like bad in that sense.
Got you.
Like you would never take money from your family, right? And you bring someone into your home, it's like an extension of your family.
Exactly.
Which is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is because in the West that we don't.
No, we don't.
We could offer money and they'd still be like, "You're not coming to my fucking house." It just wouldn't happen. And I've tested that. When I was 20, I was back in the UK temporarily, and I ended up doing the cycle Land's End to John O'Groats. Yeah. And I remember being in cities where you couldn't camp. I was just trying to look for somewhere to pitch the camp. Landed at the city at sunset. And I remember knocking on people's doors, asking if I could
by the garden.
Camp, pitch the tent. And there was a couple of times where the door just opened up, slam.
Yeah.
Which is fun, and I do get it. You know, who the fuck is this guy? But you would never get that. I don't think I ever got that. I don't think I ever got that in all of my travels. If anything, they were always extra.
Yeah, like Kazakhstan.
Yeah. Very extra. Speaking of extra. Speaking of being super hospitable.
A bit too friendly.
Yeah.
Tell that story
a bit differently. Yeah, I will tell that story. Yeah. Speaking of extra. In Mongolia, I must have been 2 to 3 weeks in the Altai Mountains, hiking, again, solo, unsupported. And I remember coming across a concrete hut in the distance, and you're in the middle of nowhere. You know, you're high up in the plateau there, effectively. And I remember seeing a hut, and it looked like the track that I was on runs right by theirs, and I was like, oh yes, you know, if they're in, which I could see that they were in because there's smoke coming out the chimney, then maybe I can get inside and, you know, have some hot tea, because it was about -15 at this point, -10, -15. And they were in, and I rocked up, and they were, you know, a nice family. They were a Kazakh family that I learned living in Mongolia. That's very common. They invited me inside. They gave me a seat. They gave me some hot Kazakh chai, which I love the Kazakh chai out there. It's kind of like very sweet. just what I needed, you know. Some snacks, and about 45 minutes went by, and I remember thinking I should get ready to leave now, because this is normally it'd be only 15-20 minutes usually.
Right.
I remember thinking this was extra long just because I was super happy to be there, you know, and converse with locals, even though that was hand gestures and like drawing in the sand. And as I went to tell the guy at the hut, like, it's time for me to go, I just saw him looking at me like weird. You know, strange, like he's thinking something and thinking, what the fuck? And then he looks to his wife, he looks back at me, and then I'm looking to his wife. And right there and then, all in hand gestures, he linked his two fingers, pointed at me and his wife, and then pointed to the bed.
Okay.
And it took me a few seconds to realise what I was trying to. Yeah, that didn't cross my mind straight away. I was thinking, oh, is he? What was that? What?
Saying sleep on the
And
bed,
then
maybe?
yeah, and then it the penny dropped. And I was like, no. And I looked at him. I remember looking at her, and it was that sort of awkward because I didn't know what to.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I was going to
So
say no,
weird.
but I didn't know how to say
Insane.
no.
What was her expression? I want to know what she was doing.
Just another day at the office. Another day at the office is what she was thinking.
You were like, no. She was like, yeah.
She was just pressing her kid, and she was just like,
She's like, please take me as well. Like,
Get me out of here.
It was like she was used to that. It was just like, I am happy to please. And I remember, just exchanging looks with a pair of them. This probably went on for a number of seconds, and I just put on a fake laugh then, you know, like. And then he didn't laugh straight away, and a few seconds in, he laughed, and, you know, I looked at my watch, I stood up and made a swift exit, thanked him for his time and his extra hospitality. And she continued to breastfeed her child, and I made an exit, walking through the outside thinking, fucking hell, was that a wife offering? Or were they now laughing and taking the piss?
yeah.
Thinking, oh, you thought we were serious. Who knows?
Yeah.
I remember speaking to my logistics manager, though, and him telling me that is very rare, more common back in the day, but it does happen. But deep in the mountains. And I was deep in the
Was your
mountains.
logistics manager asking you to point where it was on the map?
Yeah. Was he charging you?
Do you think that was because they were so out in the sticks then?
Yeah,
Most
I think
likely.
it was. I think they don't see.
That's what I would assume.
Westerners,
Yeah, because the interesting thing about your story is obviously it's from your perspective. What I always wonder is how many times are these people living in the hut seeing somebody else for the first time?
Yeah.
Very rare, surely, right?
Yeah.
There, I would say very, and then if you are crossing through there, you're in a car and you're not going to stop at that hut because you push on another 100 or so miles and you'll be at a bigger community.
Yeah.
Whereas they were just like one hut in the middle of the mountains, and so to come across them, you're going to have to be walking or maybe not even cycling because the track is, unless you're on a mountain bike.
Santander bike.
Santander bike, yeah. Still searching for that hut.
To the peak of the mountain. I think that's why.
All the base are taken off.
Oh, fucking hell.
But that's interesting because we, you talked about your experiences in these countries as a white man, right? A Westerner, right? Coming to these different places. You talked about it predominantly in Madagascar. I forget the word. They call it like Vahasa or something like that. What do they call?
Fugazi.
Yeah,
something like that. I won't put you on the spot with your
Madagascar.
but
Vazagi? Something like that?
something like that.
So, oh god, yeah.
But it starts with V.
Yeah,
something
like
like
I'm sure it's Fasa, isn't it? Fasa.
That was one
Let me
of them.
have a
Yeah,
look.
that might be it. But you talked about that, right? And you also mentioned about how Madagascar, obviously, colonization, past French, organ stealing, all these different crazy things.
Yeah.
Pakistan, India once, colonized as well. But I went on a little backpacking trip back in September.
Yeah.
Very tame. Don't worry. I won't pretend like it's anything. It's not.
Where was that?
I went Rome for a little bit, Paphos, and then went Jordan for a week, which was the main
nice.
thing,
Yeah.
which was really dope. And
No wives were offered in this one.
no, I was off, unfortunately. But when I was in Jordan, I was in hostels and stuff like that. So I just grouped up with a couple of guys, and they were all come from the UK, one from Canada. They were white guys.
Yeah.
And when we were out there in Petra, it's very desolate out there. The town is really just there for the purpose of tourism.
Right.
So we were walking down, one of the hills, and a bunch of school kids were there, and they came out after school, and they were walking up to us and they saw us, and it's just 3 white guys, me, Brown, whatever, and they started pointing at one of the white guys, and they were like, whitey, whitey, and then like came out to them, they grabbed him by the arm, they were like, white man.
They don't see that much there, right? That's probably right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
it's
saying.
more
Like
excitement, right?
Exactly. So you know, in your experiences as well, when you're looking at going to Madagascar and everything like that, and they don't see it, your experiences, correct me where I'm wrong, is a little bit different in the sense of they were a little bit scared. Again, colonization, organ stealing, all that crazy stuff in Madagascar. But even still, I think, you know, you see videos of like when people go to China, if they're, you know, basketball players or things like that, a bit different, they're like 7 foot. But still, when they see a person of color or even a white person, it's like first time ever, holy crap.
Certain
like,
places,
so what was that experience like then? Because that's probably not something, you know, white people, to be fair, you know, Westerners are used to when they go touristing, because it's just a normal thing, right? What was that like?
No,
then?
it's true. That was bizarre, very bizarre, because I was warned that it could happen, but it's one thing being told about it and then another to actually experience it, but to actually see the fear on their faces too. Like if there was a group of kids, you walk towards them to shake their hand, they are like, they're moving back, because if they're told that if they touch a white person they'll blow up into smoke. Boom.
Whoa.
And so they don't want to get close.
Racism in itself.
Reverse racism.
Yeah, and that probably would have come from when the French did colonize. I think they were like, fucking, how can we make sure that the kids don't go close to the white people? Let's just tell them something scary that they'll be like, fuck, go in here.
Can't blame them.
Normally you
You
just
can't blame them at all, no.
Yeah, normally you're just told don't talk to strangers.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah, but I remember them just looking at me, looking at every part of my body, just like, what the fuck? You know?
Crazy, man.
He's just
I
a
remember
raggedy
that.
man with a beard and everything's going crazy.
Really studying me.
Yeah.
And then I remember being with my guide who was called Me, which was annoying.
Shout out to me.
Yeah, shout out to Me. So me and Me were,
It's funny, man.
were, you know, they're together in this community, and I asked him to ask them, you know, have they ever seen I want to say farang, but I think that's Thai. I think they say farang. If they've ever seen a fasa. Yeah.
I'm trying to find it.
Google Translate.
Have you found it?
I'm looking.
You'll look. Keep going. I think you're
if-
right with Fasa. I think it
Fasa
was.
is something, right?
I think
Fasa.
it was, yeah.
Fassi. God, that's annoying me now. Yeah, I remember asking Me, like not me, but Me, if they have ever seen a white person, could you ask them? And they got back and they were like, no. And I was like, what about the adults?
Yeah.
Ask them. And he kept translating. I got on camera, like, no. I was like, this is their first time, because I didn't believe it. I was like, no, they have seen, and I was only like a week into the trip. And no, he was there saying this is their first time.
That's insane.
And I remember thinking, you know, I need to give them a very good impression. You know, they're going to remember me. Yeah, I need to be smiley. I need to be, you know.
You really represent your culture, your race, and who you are when you go abroad. I don't know if you guys have like felt that, but I feel it when I guess I was alone when I was traveling, so I felt like, you know,
pressure.
Everyone has a preconception of someone, and if you can break that, I think it has a really big ripple effect, bigger than I think we realize. Because they then leave that experience thinking,
they're not that bad.
This is exactly. They're not that bad, and it can be much more hospitable in the future for people who want to travel.
Yeah,
all over
100%.
Madagascar.
No, you're right. You're right. With so many countries, I remember being in Australia and we were in a hostel. It's like a fucking 18-bed dormitory hostel. Crazy. And there was this girl there who had planned to go to Vietnam, and me and my friend had just finished cycling Vietnam, but her parents didn't want her going to Vietnam for what they saw in the news and said it's a dangerous place and the locals aren't friendly. And then I said, completely wrong. I've just cycled the locals were amazing and the country is stunning and it's not dangerous at all. Maybe for a female solo traveler it's going to be different for sure. I said I don't want to sort of put thoughts into your head, but I would recommend it as a place to go. And she ended up booking her flight again.
Oh wow.
And me and my friend Matt received an email back from her saying best place she ever travelled to.
Wow.
And
That's
now
amazing.
her parents have changed their perspective because they saw how much joy their daughter got from traveling Vietnam and how amazing the locals are from the stories that she shared with them, and they were like, oh yeah, sorry,
Yeah. Well, before
we were
jump
wrong.
into
The media were wrong.
Oh,
What a surprise!
Shock horror! Shock horror! Well, before we jump into Mongolia, because I want to mention this about about Vietnam. So, because it'll tie into Mongolia.
Yeah.
The bike, right? the little old lady's bike, right?
Elder,
right?
Elder.
That was Elder. What was the name? It was Elder the
the greatest, wasn't it? Something like that.
Because when you went to Mongolia,
Elder the Incredible.
wasn't Elder was Elder Incredible the what you named
Elder the
Mongolia?
Incredible was the trailer.
trailer,
The
and
trailer,
Elder the
And the bike was just Elder.
yeah. So
Because
that,
I was like, this trailer has to do better than... Because
Yeah.
Elder was pretty fucking good. Broke 17 times. Like Elder and Dot, my friend.
yeah.
We were like,
By
none
the
of
way.
you know anyone called Elder or Dot. do you? We were like, what's the most fucking ridiculous name you can think of? And I was like...
Senders, he's like,
Yeah, and I was like, Elder is like a Welsh name,
sure.
and Dot I think is like an English name. So we're like an old
yeah.
old lady names.
Are there actually people called elder?
That's what I was gonna ask you. Like,
yeah.
that's
Elder just means older person.
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Not anymore.
I
Not
think
anymore.
you're right. I think EastEnders there was
Yeah,
Dot,
Dot.
and
Dot,
wasn't
yeah,
her
there was
best
Dot.
friend
Yeah,
called
yeah.
Elder, right? The
I don't
older
know that,
lady.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Dot is EastEnders.
no,
Yeah.
but her best
I
friend
don't
called
know.
Elder.
I
Yeah,
have
her
no
best
idea.
friend. I'm
No
gonna
way.
Google it and send it to you.
I didn't look it up, man.
I
Yeah,
never-
Dot and Elder. Type it in Google. Dot
Oh,
and
I'm
actually gonna
Elder.
look it up.
You'll see. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
The other word we were looking for is Vaza.
Oh,
Vaza.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Did I
can-
say fussy?
Fancy, yeah.
But yeah, no, I
Massa.
remember that link of Elder and Elder, and I was like, that must be the reason. 'Cause
Yeah.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
But Vietnam, that was elephantiasis, whatever it was.
Elephantiasis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elephantitis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in Thailand actually,
Thailand,
right
Thailand.
before it was before the Vietnam cycle, just
Yeah.
after, before I think.
That was
And
fun.
that was nasty. That was from a fucking mosquito. That was.
I did want to touch upon that because we've spoken about hospitality a bit,
Yeah.
and one thing I did notice from reading that your story, especially about that, is you said an anecdote of when you got out of the hospital and you'd been treated, and you saw an elder man who was sitting outside that obviously was untreatable at that point.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, from your travels, it must be really hard to just walk away from stuff like that and not just want to help everyone you see because they're always in need, or a lot of people are.
Yeah.
So, or if you could talk a bit about that, and how does that affect you?
It does affect you greatly, especially south of Madagascar. It broke my heart seeing them down there because I realised how close I was to death, and mine was more than this. But effectively for the locals, it's the same price as a cup of coffee to save your life for the medication. So three quid, 4 quid, and their life is saved, but they don't have 3 to 4 quid. And they lose their fucking life because of it.
Yeah.
And that was hard, and I didn't really realise the impact of malaria to begin with until I'd caught it. And then I learned that all of my guides have got malaria. My logistics manager has malaria. And I was I say lucky, you've got 4 different strains of malaria. Falciparum is the deadliest strain, usually kills you within 24 hours, but it's the only one that you can fully eradicate out of your system. So if I was to take any of them, I would want...
The deadliest one.
Yes, falciparum, I think it's
Yeah.
called the deadliest one. Whereas the 3 lowest, they're not going to kill you necessarily, but they're going to stay dormant in your system, and they'll poke their ugly head every few years. And so, realising that, and then understanding how many of my guides and logistics managers do have malaria and have to face it, and my guide, his son, also caught malaria during that trip, and I sent him back home. And then seeing the damage on local communities, like there's the younger generation who often can't get an education because they're suffering with malaria, have to stay at home, and then there's the older generation, like the parents who have malaria, so they can't work, so therefore their children are suffering with malnutrition because they can't afford to buy, and it's all from malaria. And it was only then that I realised the impact malaria has, and I wanted to do something when I got back home, and I became ambassador for Malaria No More UK Spoken Parliament. We'll get onto that.
That's amazing.
But and again, I remember seeing it at elephantitis. This guy was past the point of recovery because I spoke to the doctor. It wasn't that day, but I did speak to a doctor about that, and he said, describe what his leg looked like, and I was like, his leg was like 5 times the size of my leg. His toe, each of his toes was literally almost the size of my fist, and he couldn't get up. He has to move. His leg is so heavy, and he was like, he's done. I'm like, fucking hell.
That's rough.
It's really
man.
sad.
It's
I remember
awful.
seeing
Very
a
sad.
documentary back in the day. If you guys remember, like the Elephant Man, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
like just seeing that as a kid
Sad
was a
movie
lot,
as well.
and then
Mm.
just knowing that this is not just like a special case that's all over the world.
Yeah,
like,
all over.
yeah, it's tragic.
All over, and they can, knowing that they can rid it, but they can't afford to.
Yeah,
It's crazy that you can't save your own life if you don't have enough money. It's
money rules
just,
the world, man.
yeah, it's painful to see.
Very sad.
And then I think the more you travel, the more you realise how much pain and suffering is out there. So you can't help but also be humbled
Mm.
and be thankful. Like there's times that I come back from my travels and yes, the limelight, the hype, progression, making more money, building the brand, but then I will just be thrown back to an experience that I had and I'm just like, what does all this matter? And so you can't help but to stay grounded, and I like that. I do like that process, and I think anytime that I do start getting arrogant or overconfident, I just need to go abroad again, like travel, or just draw back on an experience where it will fucking humble me right out,
Well, speaking of humbling experiences, then Mongolia. Let's get into the 3 big ones now.
Yes.
Mongolia. So, I mean, the one thing I found funny is that you were walking most of it in Crocs as well. That's a good advert.
I know.
Was it
Wearing
out there?
socks.
How the hell did you manage to walk that in Crocs?
Oh man.
Insane.
Honestly, it was funny because everyone was banging on about good, Altberg. Altberg jumped on as a sponsor.
Dope.
Wow.
They didn't, not financial sponsor, but like they provided me sort of these tailor-made boots, and they were just too heavy. They were just on my trail. I wore them for like a day, I think it was, and that was it. That was for Madagascar. Sorry, the Altberg boots.
Sure.
How did the weight of your boots affect the amount you can walk in a day?
I think I never had them on long enough to find out, to be honest,
Right.
because I put them on and I'm like, my feet are already starting to sweat.
Yeah.
They're heavy. They're taking
Sink
up
to
more
the
energy. And then in Madagascar, stick to the sand. And then in Madagascar, if they get wet, they're taking forever to dry. They
Yeah.
become heavier, trench foot. And I'm like, this is not good. I think I went to, was it JJB Sports? Do you remember that?
Oh, back
Oh
in
my
the day.
God.
Do you remember
That's a
JJB?
I just got a flash of it
Oh.
in our high street. It's all opposite.
Yeah,
X.
yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's a throwback.
man.
I
Oh
went
my
to
goodness.
JJB Sports and got myself some
Really?
£25 Carrymore trainers.
Oh
Nice.
God.
And I used them to cross Mongolia, and I took myself some Crocs as well. And in the Crocs, I would wear them in
That's
the
a big
evening.
clout for Caramel you just given.
Right?
That's £5,000. When you mentioned that, all of Mongolia was 5,000.
Yeah, just
all
over.
inclusive, like it was a resort. But I was like,
That's yeah.
you really shoestringed your life.
Yes. Yeah, I remember I came back and spoke to my speaking agent who organised the theatre tours, and he has like all of these people, different adventures, world firsts, records, you name it. And he said that is by far the cheapest expedition he's ever come across, let alone world first. He was like, they're usually 100 grand plus.
Wow.
And that's
100
grand?
100 grand at least.
my
At
goodness.
least.
You're a madman.
Yeah, and then I'm there like I'm 5, invalid insurance, trailer built, and family friends back garden.
What would go into a trek to rack up to 100 grand?
100K, yeah.
I think logistics, equipment. I'm trying to think.
Sustenance, maybe,
Yeah, I'm
like,
trying to think of the
food on the way.
Yangtze now
I
because
would
that was
assume
more
equipment
expensive.
would be sponsored though.
If you can get the sponsor.
Yeah, equipment would be sponsored if you can get the sponsor. But once you have a brand paying that much, you'll be able to, you've got the money then to purchase the best stuff. And so I think the best way to go about it is to get sponsorship and finance from a brand. Let's say if they have 150 that they give you grand, and then 100 grand or less goes towards getting everything to make sure it's the proper kit. Whereas I didn't have that, I had a budget. When I flew back from Thailand, I moved in with my parents. I had about £200 in my account. I couldn't afford gym membership. My uncle was a lorry driver, so he was dropping stuff off at different farms. He saw a tractor tyre, asked the farmer if he could take it, and he brought over to me a tractor tyre, and that was my training in the back garden. And so I was then applying for a National Geographic grant of £5,000. But then an uncle of mine wanted the documentary. He wanted the show, and he said, "Don't apply for the grant, and I will give you a check for that."
Right.
Wait, as in he
He will-
sponsored you essentially.
Yeah, he
That's
will
amazing.
sponsor me instead of the Nat Geo grant,
Got you.
and he wants all of the footage in
footage.
return. So I was like, "Fucking great," you know.
Perfect,
And that's
yeah.
how that happened. And that expedition, was a £5,000 expedition.
Wow.
Mental.
which is wild. Otherwise, I don't really know how I would have had to rely on the Nat Geo grant.
Yeah.
And I was getting closer and closer because it was a world first, you know.
Yeah.
But then that sort of took off the nerves of waiting to see if I could. And then that, you know, after the flight, and I forgot how much my logistics manager charged, but you've got about $2,000 left, 3 grand left.
For the whole of...
For the trip then, after the flight, after the insurance, after paying the logistics manager, after paying for the trailer, you've probably got $2,000
Oh my God.
remaining.
While you were going for this Nat Geo grant, did you ever find out what you were going up against?
In terms of the expedition,
Yeah,
or in terms of other
terms
people?
of other people trying to get the grant.
No, I did
Hopping out
not.
to the Tesco. Go see every
Yeah.
Tesco in the country.
But I know that they were very much interested in science-based expeditions.
Right.
Got you.
That they would have probably financed a science-based one if it wasn't for
I guess
Mongolia.
your one was just so ludicrous. It's like, well, if you give him the investment, we're probably not going to get much on it because he's probably not going to complete it.
Yeah.
In a way, it
first,
makes
right?
sense from a business perspective, I guess. Yeah.
And I remember my uncle also saying that. My uncle was first to admit. He said, "I don't believe you can do it." And I was just like, "Fuck you."
I had a question on we talk about logistics. Yeah. One thing that racked my head, I was like, how do you go downhill with a 120 kilo trailer? I don't understand.
You be very careful. You
Because-
walk very slowly.
Because you had the strap on and the harness, but you know, let's assume you're going downhill. It's just going to come straight to your back. It's going to push right into your back, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to fall essentially.
It's got to fall. So you've got to take the impact of it falling. So you've got to bring it close to you, so it doesn't have that momentum. Keep it close to you, like push the handles, the metal handles in front of you already.
Yeah.
And then when you start going over the slope, it's already there, and then you've got your poles, and so you're using your feet on your poles in front.
Those poles you sanded down by like a foot. I don't know
Foot
about that.
over a foot.
Yeah,
I've still
over a
got
foot.
them. Yeah.
You still got them?
Yeah.
I was
Nice.
actually going to ask that. Is there things that you still have from all your treks and journeys and stuff? What do you have?
Yes,
What's some
I've
of
got the
things you
poles from Mongolia. The trailer is still in Ulaanbaatar, actually.
Wow.
Wow.
That would be cool to get the
Museum.
trailer back.
Yeah. that'd be
Yes.
sick, fly over,
Yeah,
isn't
you
it?
know, because that was I think it was a stat, I don't know where I came across it, but over 90% of hauling expeditions fail.
have? Right.
Like sleds in the poles or
Sure.
carts in the deserts. And they are built solidly in factories, whereas I couldn't afford that. So it was a family friend that built it in a back garden, and he couldn't do no carbon fibre. It was mild steel. So on an empty load, it's already 40 kilograms, you know? But yeah, it made it, and it survived it. And I do want that back, Eldon the Incredible.
That would be incredible.
That would be dope.
And I have my machete.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
That's fucking
that's
cool.
really
How'd you
sick.
get that
Yeah.
through customs?
I know. I just put it in my rucksack. Crazy.
There was different times back then.
Yeah, mental. So I've got that, and that's all rusted now. But that's fucking cool.
That's sick.
That is
I think
what
I want to frame that.
Yeah.
But
for
I
sure.
also managed to get back elephant bird eggshells.
Oh,
Yeah, that's insane.
that was really cool to hear about.
Yeah, I
Because
could not believe it.
yeah, I didn't even know what the hell that was in
No.
the book. I was like, "What is this?" And
That's
I
what
had to
gave
look
me
it up.
elephantitis.
Yeah, yeah, right. And it
Different
was
location,
funny.
but still got it.
And it was funny because I was on the southern beaches, and they're scattered in their thousands, these shells, and my guide tried to explain what they are, but I'd never heard of it. And we've got this thing when we were scuba diving instructors in Thailand, we created this thing for elephant sharks. And we would tell the students, you know, look out for the elephant sharks, and we would come back up. Did you see the elephant shark? And they're like, yeah, or no. Like, there's no such thing. You just kind of pranking them, you winding them up. And so he was saying about elephant birds, and I was like, hold on a minute, this rings a bell. And he started collecting these shells, and then I took a few, and then anyway, fast forward a week or two, and I was in Fort Dauphin. And I just looked at elephant birds and realised they went extinct over 2,500 years ago. They were like almost twice the size, or 2.5 times the size as ostriches.
Yeah.
And I only bought a few shells. So I went back to my guide and I was like, look, when we were on the beaches, how many shells did you get? And he's like, I got a lot. I was like, fuck, can I take some? And he handed me some, and I managed to fly them back too.
Brilliant.
And yeah, I was in the museum here in London. Is it the Science Museum? Natural History Museum, yeah. And they've got an elephant bird eggshell.
Cool.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was
the whole thing put together.
The whole thing put
That's
together.
amazing.
I think the biggest one was put together by David Attenborough's team, and is in Cardiff.
Oh, wow.
And that's the biggest egg that they've managed to put together, and it's just crazy to
How
think.
big
fuck,
is
I've
a
got
fully
these.
constructed one?
It must be about
Were you-
a foot.
That's
It
an
must be
omelette,
about
bro.
a foot
an
high.
omelette.
That's a big omelette, bro.
Yeah, yeah, feeding the whole family, and maybe half a foot wide. It is. It's big.
That is wild.
Good luck
If
pushing
you
that
think
out.
about a chick coming out of that,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
And
Do
the
you-
eggshells, the shell is maybe half a centimeter
Thick,
Yeah, that's
thick.
sick.
as in
I would say.
the depth of the shell.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and when I saw it in the museum, I was like, wow, yeah, that's exact. Look, same coloration, same markings, everything. And I'm so glad I
That's cool.
came back
To
with a
think
few.
that-
Have you got?
No,
Oh,
go
sorry,
for it.
sorry.
No, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, have you got like a bunch of the shells on you? Like not on you, like right now, but at home or somewhere. Or,
Yeah,
So, do you think they're worth something? Do you
I
think
have
they're?
no idea.
Because if it's extinct, like the bird's extinct or whatnot, like this.
You would think so, right?
Yeah, right. Like,
Yeah. But
Would
they
be
are.
cool.
Then it's cheaper just to take a book a flight to Madagascar, and they're there in the thousands on the beaches. You know.
It's easy, yeah.
I was gonna say like the shells that you probably touched. No one's probably touched those in 2,500 years. Perhaps,
Yeah, that-
right?
yeah.
And that's another thing I was thinking of is you've walked in places on this planet. Perhaps no one else has
Chinggis.
ever
Mm.
walked before.
Chinggis, yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to that in a second.
Yeah.
Perhaps people have never. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but you've probably touched things, walked, blah blah blah, been in places that no one has ever been ever before, or in
A long time.
thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool, man.
I'd like to think that they have. I like to think people have, they have been here. They have walked this path.
Yeah.
But that's a point with that. I don't think. Yeah, you're right. Maybe no one has touched those eggshell, or maybe they were hunter gatherers. Maybe they were making an omelette, and that's pretty wild to think.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what Madagascar, I'm sure, is only 2,500 years old in terms of when humans arrived.
Oh, okay.
So that's relatively new.
If these eggshells are so, I mean, this bird was like alive so long ago.
Yeah.
How are they still on the surface, just on the beaches?
I
not
think-
completely within
I
the earth?
think because of how thick and heavy they are, I think it will take a while. Like you hit them against it and they're like stone.
Wow.
You know?
Maybe they were fossilized and then the rock broke and then it's on the beach. or
But they're
something.
also on sand, so sand is erodes less.
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, they're on the sand there and they're deep, they're buried, and they just must have been. I don't know how many birds would have been there, but they went extinct because of human activity.
Right.
But
Of course.
effectively, it wouldn't have just been there on the beach. It probably was further inland. It's probably deep underground, and each year there's probably more uncovered.
Yeah.
Would you manage
Yeah,
to find
which-
Genghis's grave out there? 'Cause if anyone's gonna do it, it's gotta be you.
Yeah, right.
If it's
Imagine
not
I
you, no one
walked
stands
past
a
it and I
chance.
had no idea.
Oh.
Imagine
You were lying under your trailer.
It's crazy to think. It's crazy to think. Like, it's you. Obviously, you walked from east to west or whatever, but you essentially walked on one sliver across the thing, and you still got the rest of the 99% of the country up and down.
Yeah.
You even touched, despite the fact you trekked thousands.
Exactly.
Of miles,
Yeah,
which
I
is
say
mental.
that. I say that, especially with Mongolia.
Yeah.
It was like, although I've walked 1,500 miles,
Yeah.
there's still so much I
It's
haven't
just
seen.
one. Yeah.
Still so much I haven't seen.
I had a
Obviously,
question. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
no.
I thought you were finishing. But the question was something that I saw recently on the group chat. Group chat. It was that Mongolia is like only populated in one certain part of the country.
Yes.
So, could you speak on why that is? Like,
Yeah, I can. So the population is around 4 million in Mongolia.
Okay.
But put this into perspective, you can fit Wales in Mongolia 75 times.
Wow.
Oh wow.
And there's also 4 million in Wales.
Oh wow. So it's just sparse, like
Very sparse,
spread.
but I think it's 3 of the 4 million, probably more now, that is based in the capital city,
Yeah.
Ulaanbaatar.
Yeah, right.
And so that means you're coming across. There's like, I think it's as remote as Canada in a way, because think of how
yeah.
big Canada
yeah,
is
yeah,
as a country, very sparsely populated, like a person every few miles, which is insane. But they're obviously not every few minutes. They're concentrated in little settlements and
Yeah.
towns, smaller cities. But it's expanding the capital city. It's expanding because of climate change.
Okay.
And so because the winters are colder, the summers are hotter, the winters get very harsh. There's something called the Zood. And when the Zood hits, I think it strips it down to like -50, -60, just a storm. And they're getting colder and colder. It's just a freak storm that hits.
A yearly thing, or
I
once in a while
I
thing?
think yearly.
How long does
wow.
that last?
It's sporadic. It can be like 5 minutes. It can be a day.
Oh my god.
It just comes through and it just drops that temperature, and the livestock are struggling to survive it now. These animals are struggling to survive it. So with that, the nomads are then struggling to make a living, because if a zood comes through, or just in general the winters are harsher and the livestock can't survive, they're then forced to move to the capital to look for a different means of work, thereby to make money. But they can't afford no houses. They're not in the apartment blocks. They're in their tents. So they move over with their camels or their yak and their white felt tent as a family community. And there's now this gur district lying surrounding the capital city. And in the winter, I think it's the coldest capital city in the world, which drops to about -30, -40 degrees Celsius. And they're in a tent.
Wow.
So they burn anything they can. And that includes dirty coal, because the clean coal gets transported to China, and plastics. And so now in the winter, there's this smog that covers the city, and people tend to escape the city in the winter, those who can afford to.
Makes sense, yeah.
And newborns are dying. They're suffocating because of the air pollution. And so the doctor says, you've got to evacuate the city with this newborn, because you've given birth. It's in the winter. Your baby is going to die in a few days if you don't escape.
Wow.
But it's still expanded. Climate change is still being hit. And so actually on that expedition, I was trying to raise as much funds as I could for the Red Cross, who helped support shelter for livestock. So they'll put up these sheds, thermal sheds, and they'll help to insulate the gur as well, so that the locals can survive these harsher winter conditions, but also raising awareness, because I genuinely don't think there's many people that realise how much Mongolia is suffering due to climate change.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah,
Crazy,
really
right?
sad, man.
Yeah.
And they literally do escape in the winter because it's difficult to breathe.
That's incredible.
And so,
great.
that's why it's sort of centralised, concentrated in that area.
Makes sense,
Did you
yeah.
experience that when you went to the capital?
No, I experienced it I did experience a bit of pollution, but I was more in summer, in which they're not burning anything.
Right.
And so it's actually known as the land of eternal blue skies.
Wow.
And you can see why outside of the capital, but in the capital it's
The land of eternal grey skies.
the land of eternal smog. Yeah.
I have a question on kind of similar ilk with regards to the 3 trips, the major 3 trips. Like, do you have like any like superstitions or like good luck charms sort of thing like you brought with you on each of these treks?
I don't personally.
Okay.
I'm sort of more logical
Sure.
thinking and like but I have been, certain things have happened to me, and there's a few stories that I'm normally good at finding the answer to most stuff that I'm unsure about, but there's a few stories that I don't have an answer to.
Oh, we know.
This is the part where I walk out there.
I want to know this.
I don't want to hear this shit at all. I'm going to be trembling on the way back home.
Give us one of the worst ones you can.
Yeah.
Or don't. We can move on. We got China. We got.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 that I still don't. Maybe one of them you can find an explanation, but this one was, I was in Madagascar, and the Malagasy are very superstitious. They believe in witches and bad spirits. And so I was told, I was warned about that. So I was in Madagascar. We had a map and we also had GPS. And at this point, we were right up north, right centre of the island in the jungle. And it's sort of mountainous jungle. So you're climbing the mountains whilst hacking through the bush with a machete in hand. And I mentioned that I came across that community and it was their first time seeing a white person. That was down south. South is it's not more travelled than the north, but that area you're probably more likely to go to than you are the area that we were currently at. And there was no community on this map or the GPS, but we actually came across a community deep within the fucking jungle that weren't supposed to be there, or there was no evidence to suggest they were there. But it was great, we were like, fucking awesome, we are eating tonight. They invited us in, and it was almost like wooden shacks. It didn't look like they were there that long as well, because they hadn't flattened down the trees and there was no paddy fields, nothing like that. It was just in the jungle, And I remember that day being a full moon, clear sky, no light pollution, just thinking, wow, this is immense. And we were all sat around the fire. And then, evening came, we were all tired, and we had it was me, my guide, who was called Max, Suzanne, who was a photographer that joined us for a couple of weeks, and Lever, who was her porter carrying her stuff. So the 4 of us with a chicken called Gertrude.
Gertrude, shout out to
And-
Gertrude.
Yeah, shout out to
Gertrude.
And so the reason the chicken was with us, by the way, just to touch base on that, otherwise people are like, what the fuck? It's cultural and tradition that in order to summit the highest mountain in Madagascar, you carry yourself a white chicken to protect you from the bad spirits and witches of the rainforest. So I'm all about respecting the culture, so I picked up a chicken and named her, because it was a him, sorry. It was a cockerel, and gave him a girl's name, Gertrude. And Gertrude wasn't just there with the highest peak. He needed to, unfortunately, summit a few others before we get, but because there was no community that we would come across, now was our only chance to collect a white chicken.
Right.
So 2.5 weeks, we had this chicken fully domesticated in my backpack, chirping away, fucking well annoying.
I'm gonna eat you.
Yeah, and I couldn't eat it, it was nothing like that.
How's your opinions of Nando's?
Yeah, and chicken, literally my favourite food. And so we come across this community that we're like, what the fuck? This is not supposed to be here, But we loved that, and we were given our own wooden shack. We got our heads down for the night. It was Lever, me, Suzanne, and Max with the chicken. And here's my take on the story. I wake up in the middle of the night because I see Max walking in, must have been 2-3 o'clock in the morning, walking in this wooden shed, out of breath. I could see, the steam from his mouth, and a machete in hand. And I was like, are you all right, mate? And he was like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Yeah, go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep. I saw him get into his sleeper bag. He went back to sleep. That was my take. Nothing weird, but I do remember having a bit of a bad nightmare that night. His take, right, was fucking... He woke up the middle of the night, he looks to his right, sees Suzanne, me, and Lever all convulsing. I've never convulsed in my life. He was saying we were convulsing in our sleep. And those two also had a bad nightmare that night as well, by the way. We'll get to that. And he said he looks to the door, and the door is like wooden planks. It's got about 1 inch slits in between that you can see outside, and he just sees the full moon and a silhouette of this lady or this figure outside, long hair, hands vaguely up. And he just like pauses for a minute and shouts like, "Oi," in Malagasy. Sees that we're still convulsing, puts the two together, thinks that she's got us under some sort of spell. In his mind, it was a no-brainer. There's a witch right outside the door in his mind. So he gets up, shouts at her, picks up his machete. She gives off a little giggle and starts to fucking run as he goes to open the door. He's a fit, strong guy. He sprints after her, hence how he was out of breath. He sprints after her, and he told us that as soon as he got to the entrance of the jungle, she just poof, vanished, gone.
Oh my God,
There's no way she could have outran him.
That's insane.
He said, and then he was looking for her. He came back to the hut, and as he opened, he says, "You woke up, Ash, asked if I was all right. I saw that all 3 of you had stopped convulsing, and you went back to sleep." And I was like, "Fuck off!"
Why did he not like?
That's what I'm
so
thinking.
curious as to like why he didn't have.
That was my question.
Yeah.
I said, if that was the case, why weren't you convulsing? You know what his
Yeah.
answer was? Gertrude was right next to him.
Gertrude.
And you know why you carry a white chicken to the summit? To protect you, but they say that the witches and black spirits and dark spirits are scared of white chickens. And he said that's why. Anyway, I was like looking to Suzanne, who's half Brazilian, half Belgium, and we're just like, okay, Max. We're like, what the fuck? And then that morning we're having breakfast. They tell the story, and then all of a fucking sudden these locals start sharing witch stories, and they all experience that same thing, all different stories, but they are acting as if it's fucking normal, and that happens every other night. And we're being translated these stories, and we're trying to converse with it like, what? Witches? And they're like. And Suzanne never slept in her own tent. No, it was me in my own tent, and they had like a 3-man tent that Lever and Max would stay in, and Suzanne had her own tent.
Sure.
She never stayed in her. She was in with Max and Lever. She was like, nah.
Did you guys tell each other that you had the nightmare the very next morning?
Then we found out that they too had also. Because I remember, I don't really remember the nightmare. I just remember having these dark sort of, just a dark dream. Is the
Yeah.
best I can do. Where I was almost convinced that it's that woke me, not Max.
Okay, yeah.
It was almost like that woke me as Max walked in.
Yeah. Okay, got you.
And they
Makes
were the
sense.
same, but they didn't wake. But they, like, Suzanne remembers having like a weird
Weird
dream. And same with Lever,
Mm.
because Lever didn't speak any English, bless him. But Max said that, they said that he had a bad, and then he was like, yeah, me too. And then I looked at Lever and I was like, please tell me you didn't just say that you had a bad one too.
See,
And I just don't know what to. I don't believe in witches. I don't believe in bad spirits.
You should.
Yeah, right. But
Ignorance is
there's
bliss.
something. Where did that come from? How many thousands of years potentially old is the whole fact that you have to take a white chicken? Where did that come from?
Mm.
Colonisation.
Why do they still? Yeah. Why do they still believe in witches? And why has it happened to almost every other local that we came across? And we were just
Yeah.
like,
We
You know, I
believe.
think
We
it's the
believe
thing,
in.
man.
We
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, lads. We believe in that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
right? From cultural and religious
Yeah.
beliefs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, if the whole world talks about it, it's got to be true.
Think of it this
right?
way, yeah. Think of
exactly. I've been trying to find ways, and so has Suzanne, by the way.
Yeah.
Really?
Been trying to find ways to shut it down. We can't.
you know what the thing is? The most suspicious thing of that whole story is the fact that you saw Max.
Yeah,
'Cause
if I hadn't,
if you hadn't, you just
Yeah.
think he's just lying or just a Madagascar.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
chatting
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
The fact that you saw him out of breath with the machete is the thing that, if anything, the whole story makes it a little bit adds to
and,
credibility.
and to be honest,
Yeah.
it was the chicken too. It was Gertrude. I didn't expect. I didn't even consider, because Gertrude, I was just like,
Sure.
yeah, it's a chicken. No one's scared of the chicken. But when he said that, and I remember Gertrude was literally there.
Right.
He like sleeping right there next to him, and he was there saying, Gertrude, like, she would not cast a spell on me. Gertrude's fucking there, looking at her, thinking, don't you fuck about. But that was a bit where I was lost at. I was like,
He was a fighting
you know, we're
cockerel
in
as well.
matches. It was what?
Yeah, he was a fighting cockerel as
Yeah,
well.
had a
wasn't he?
number of
So he
fights.
would've-
Undefeated.
yeah, undefeated.
Never lost.
Gertrude knows Muay Thai.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I think it's very viable if, like, you know, you believe in like good energy and good
Yeah.
vibes. There's also the chance that there's also the other side, the flip
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. And there is also something else that I've never discussed on any podcast or YouTube video.
Oh, exclusive.
Exclusive. This is getting clip.
Yeah, and I don't say this because it makes me sound like a bit of a madman, but you guys are saying that you believe in this, so I don't feel so alone. But so when I was younger, I remember going with my mum, dad, and sister to my granny's grave, and I would remember walking around the graveyard. I must have been 7. It was night time. It was winter, so it wasn't late, but it must have been 8 p.m, something like that, before we drive back from Norfolk to Wales. And I remember just looking up at the church, once I'd done all that stuff, I remember looking up at the church, and I remember seeing, I'm still convinced to this day, someone holding onto the spike at the top of the
pole,
church.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it, holding on, sort of swinging backwards and forwards, sort of head sort of looking down, almost like wearing hats with feathers, but just looking down at me. And I remember looking up, and I don't remember my mum and dad calling me, but they were calling me for ages, and they could see me just looking up at this thing. And all as I remember is my dad coming and covering my eyes with his hand.
God.
And I still ask him, what was up there? Did you say anything? And he still says no.
He's chatting shit.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
100%.
I'm not 7 anymore. Was there something up there? And he was like,
Why on earth would he cover your eyes?
yeah,
Yeah.
I said, yeah, all of this. I was like, you covered, what were you, like, you were just fixated. We were calling you for ages and you were just looking up at something. I was like, well, anyway, I remember having this white face, dark hair, you know, with a hat and feathers. And then fast forward a number of years. This was now when I was in Hentlin, a new build. My dad built a house. We were living in the country there, near Denby. And it was about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't dark. There was nothing scary about it. I was talking to my parents. I went in the kitchen to put a kettle on, shouted, do you want a tea too? They said yes. And as I walked to, it's kind of like this open dining area. It's dining room, lounge, and kitchen. Sure. And as I walk towards the kettle, I see someone looking in out the window, just looking.
Fuck off, man.
Just looking in. Black hair, white face. The freaky thing is, I thought there was a guy, our neighbour, who had black hair, white face, But this thing had long hair, so I remember thinking, oh, that's weird. And I said, I think his name was Gwyn. I said to Dad, Gwyn's outside. And Dad was like, ah. And then straight away he runs, because sometimes the neighbour drops by. He runs, and no one's there. And I remember it scaring me for a split second, where thinking, fucking hell, that was a creepy way to look through a window, you know? And he said, there's no one there. And I was like, yeah, go in. And he was like, his car's out. Like, then he wasn't even in the house. And I was like, well, there was someone out there. And, 11 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, I thought nothing of it again. I didn't think anything when I was...
There's more.
Yeah, there's fucking more. And then 2000 and when was this? 2009 or 2010, before I left for travels. I was with my friend training, like literally exercising, doing sit-ups. I was in my garage again. We were listening to fucking DMX. We were doing sit-ups, and I fucking did a sit-up. And right in front of me, to the right of the door, which exits and enters the garage, there was a figure looking at me, white face, dark hair, in the fucking garage. And I was just, I was so freaked out that I stopped the music and we ended that training session. I was sat there on my knees. I was doing crunches on my knees. And then I told Matt, fucking hell, there was just something in the corner of that room just looking at me. And he was like, what? And then I pressed pause on the music, and I was just like, and it only ever lasts. It's not quick enough, because I kind of always try to make reasons as to what it could be. You know, have you ever had something where there's something there and you see it, and it's not, it's just something with your eyesight or your brain, nothing's there. This, it's longer than that, but not long enough where I get to show anyone else. It's something, it must be, it's not a split second, it must be maximum a second.
Yeah.
Like just before the second mark, which is fucking long enough.
That's a while.
That's a while. That's, you know. And there was another time, and it happened twice. Unless one was 2009, one was 2010. But this was a different house, different location. This was Llysfine, North Wales still. And I was just on the computer desk, and again I was listening to some music. I remember having my dressing gown on, I was in a cup of tea, cheese on toast. I was in a happy place, you know, STA travel. Yeah, it was all, making phone calls, getting flights booked, all of that, music on loud. No one was in the house, and something just leaned over me.
That's creepy.
Shit. And I caught it again. Just eyes, a white face, long black hair. And I freaked, and I remember phoning Matt. Matt was my next door neighbour. He left, the guy that I travelled with, and calling him, and he was at home, and then he came round, and I was just like, fucking hell, that thing.
You think it's the same spirit or something like that?
I think if it's something, if it is something, if it's just like not my mind playing tricks, I've seen it, I've looked at it, I've registered it. 4 different, and it was only that third time, by the way, that I connected it with my 7-year-old self.
Right.
That I was like, if they do bang on, if there's such thing as a guardian, it's scary looking to be a guardian, but you know. And then I do then start questioning. In fact, let me tell you this story. This other story, I was in the Alps. I was training for Mongolia. I just had a good night out with the lads. In Innsbruck, and 4 days later I went back to Innsbruck with my rucksack to walk from Innsbruck, Austria to Garmisch, Germany, and I was walking through the Alps. I had a map, and I didn't want to take the route that everyone else was taking, but I also knew it would be reckless to go off that route because it was at the wrong season. There'd been a number of landslides, people had died, but I thought, well, I'm not deep in the Alps. You know, I'm just sort of going from Innsbruck to Garmisch, and as I was walking, I decided to go off trail completely, which was pretty reckless because I hadn't had no one knew really where I was. They knew where I was walking to, but they didn't know where. And I remember following it. It was almost like this dry riverbed, if you like, and I just thought, I'll just follow this. Let's just see where it takes me. And I remember following it pretty much all day. And then it got to a point where it was almost like a dry waterfall. It just kind of went up. There was a bit of water trickling, maybe a bit of puddle down at the bottom. I remember thinking, fucking hell, you know, because it was all loose rock, kind of. I had a 16-kilogram rucksack, bright red rucksack on my back, and thinking, I don't want to turn back because that means I'll be walking at least a good few hours back on myself, back on the route, and that's not what I would do. Normally, you know, traveling, doing the Himalayas without no permit, crossing to Burma without no visa, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So And I think that's what my parents were always worried about with Mongolia, is they wouldn't know when I needed to stop pushing, because I was like that. And so, of course, I was now in Europe, Alps. I wasn't going to let this stop me. And I thought, I can navigate, I can find my way. And I'm climbing this, and I'm super aware, a bit of adrenaline in at this point, super aware. And I've always been very situationally aware, very perspicacious, been understanding what's going on around me, and my senses were heightened. And as I'm climbing, looking at where to put my feet, where to put my hands, I just feel a sharp poke right in my bicep, like a poke. I'm thinking, oh, remember it, no stick, no stone. My senses were high. I would have noticed something going on. I remember it being a poke, and then I was thinking, as I'm gripped onto this, maybe 3 meters up at this point, 4 max, maybe, and thinking, let's say it was a stick, let's say it was a stone. For the first time, I took that as a sign, and I actually decided to listen to my gut and go against this climb. And that was one of the first times I actually bailed, if you like, where I climbed down. I listened to my instinct. I didn't know what it was. Normally when I'm 19, I would have just fucking carried on climbing. But I was thinking, it wasn't a muscle twitch. Have you ever muscle cramp? I know that feeling. It wasn't that. Wasn't a stick, wasn't a stone. But say if it was, I'm going to take it as a sign. I'm going to turn around and just fucking swallow my pride and walk back on myself. And I did. I climbed back down. I walked maybe about 5 meters away. And as I was walking, there was a mini landslide right there and then where I was climbing. Right there and then. And when I say mini, the rocks were still, if it cracks you on the head, you could be knocked out. You could be the puddle down on the face down. I can drown. You could still die. But it wasn't like this big... And I remember getting goosebumps from that, thinking, what the fuck? The next day I had a bruise on my arm.
No way.
A bruise on my arm. So I was like, it definitely wasn't a cramp or a muscle twitch. Still could have been a stick or a stone, but I was just so hyper aware, I just don't remember anything like that happening. And if that did happen and I was aware of it, then I wouldn't have stopped climbing. I would have been, that was a stick that poked me, carry on. Or that was a stone, carry on. It looks fine.
Yeah.
What's the saying? What, once is a coincidence, twice is a...
Whatever
they say.
And if it was a stick or something, surely you would have found that item or where that would have come from.
Yeah.
But it was just...
And I would have carried on climbing.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Because that shit happens,
Sticks and stones may break my bones.
I wouldn't be like...
The landslides will never kill me.
Yeah, and so it was only that last, when I was at the computer desk sort of doing the research, where that happened, where it was right over me, it was too close, it was the closest it had ever been, that I was a bit like, it was almost like over the years it got closer. And then I don't know what that poke was, but can you imagine, let's just be silly here, can you imagine if you put all of that together?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I think, well, how did I keep getting what? And then I get silly with it. And then I think, well, if I personified incredible, what if?
The other way around as well.
What if that wasn't alone in the desert? In a fucking scary way, you know what?
Yeah.
And there were times that was weird. I think this was sleep deprivation, but when me and my friend were cycling on Dot and Elder in Vietnam, for some reason he felt it too, that we almost felt a presence, and we always kind of think on that cycle there were 3. And we put it down to, maybe it's because we've taken lots of photos and videos, that it was like the third eye. You know, that. But it was weird, and I didn't think of that until like many years later. I was like, there was always something like,
Wasn't there like a sort of near-death situation also during the bikes?
Yeah,
Was
was
that
that when you almost fell asleep?
Yeah, that was that was a 39 hours with no sleep. No, 39 hours cycling straight. Breaks in between, like Red Bull noodles, but like no sleep.
Right?
What we can afford. But over 45 hours with no sleep, and I think it must have been like hour 30, in the night, just cycling through. I actually fell asleep whilst cycling.
That's crazy.
I didn't know it was a thing, was possible, and it was only temporarily. But as I dozed off, obviously the handlebars swerved into the road, but it was my back tire that hit my friend's front tire. And it was that woke me up. And as that woke me up, literally a lorry went past.
Oh my
like honking, boo, boo, which I hated when they honk the horn. You go from like really tired to then a honk like that, which really hits the core. Yeah, air horn, from a lorry. Dark times, those ones, fucking hell. But I don't know, man. I don't know. And then there was another time in the Gobi Desert. I think this is something separate, has nothing to do, but this is just a freaky story where I hadn't seen anyone in the Gobi Desert for days now. No one's there. There's no reason to be there. I didn't even see camels at this point in the Gobi Desert. And I remember looking forward to see the next human because it had been, I think, I don't know, I want to say 3-4 days without seeing anything, no wildlife, no nothing. And I'm in my tent. And the worst happens, doesn't it? And I remember Manuel, my German friend, freaking me out because I told him about these stories, about this white-faced, black-haired thing, and he was like, "Oh man, what I thought you're in the middle of the Gobi Desert and you zip down your tent and you get a glimmer of it out there." And I'm like, don't say that shit to me. Like,
No one wants to hear that.
I don't, and I'm gonna be alone and in the middle of the desert, like and not hearing all noises. And this did scare me a lot before I had attempted Mongolia. You know, I had nightmares about that and the wolves and all of this. But anyway, so I'm in my tent. I hadn't seen anyone. And then I fucking wake up in the middle of the night to footsteps and breathing on the outside of my tent.
Yeah.
Fucking footsteps and breathing. And it was one of those where I almost forgot where I was. You know when you wake up and you're half asleep,
Sure.
you're kind of like, oh, where am I again?
Yeah.
It was one of those. And then I heard noises and then you kind of flick through people in your head who it could be. And then you realise, oh my God. Yeah, and then you realise you're in the desert. And I remember almost not breathing. I remember just being super still. I remember just the chill in my body going super cold at this point. Almost like a cold sweat, you know, thinking, what the fuck? As I heard footsteps and it sounded like human footsteps. So I was scared that someone was there and they didn't make a noise. They didn't bother trying to wake me. So they have some evil intentions. If they're going to just rock up on a tent and just get curious and walk around it, what are they going to do next? And I remember it being super... It's a tent, right? So it's super thin. If they wanted to throw a rock or something on it, it's going to cave through. So I remember it even like protecting my head, you know, this sensitive area. Wow. And then I always had, I think it was the torch to my right, the knife to my left. There's a bit OCD in the tent. And I remember I had the torch. And literally these were like 5-minute movements to get the torch. 5 minutes just to get, because it was like, so you know where you hear the creaking in your bones when it's super quiet. And I remember sitting up, the world's longest crunch, you know, getting up and then getting to the zip. And I had like followed its pace now. I knew how long at this stage, how long it takes to get around around the tent. But an animal did cross my mind. It's just the way that I heard the breathing. It wasn't so much the footsteps. I could hear the footprints, but I couldn't find the rhythm of the footprints, just the direction of where they're coming from. It was almost the breathing every now and then. It was like, that sounded like a person. And then I unzipped gradually, or had my hand on the zipper, and then as my ears followed it round, I unzipped it, you know, flashed the torch, and it was a dog. It was a semi-wild or a wild dog out there in the middle of nowhere, and it wasn't threatening, didn't growl at me, didn't bark. I just remember looking at it and thinking, what the fuck is that doing out here? It circled my tent a little bit more, and then it actually fell asleep there near my trailer.
Wow.
And then I remember that I wasn't threatened at that point. I was a bit curious as to where its home is, where it's come from. That spooked me a little bit. And then I thought...
And it was just a lone dog?
It was just alone. It seemed alone anyway. I couldn't see any person, nothing like that. And then I was thinking, like, who would it be with, or where's near home? Anyway, I zipped up my tent. I went back to sleep, and only a couple of hours later, I woke up then to it growling and barking. And then I realised it wasn't growling in my direction. It was barking to something out there in the distance. And then I remember being super hyper aware, like, whoa. And then
middle of the night.
Morning time. Must have been about 5 o'clock, I think it was. And it ran off barking at something. And I think it was that freaked me out the most. I was like, what was it barking at? There's nothing out here. I'm alone in the desert. Huh?
And you just never saw it again?
Never saw it again. It ran off barking.
Your luck's got to run out someday, mate. I hope not, though, for your sake.
Yeah, and I just that spooked me a little bit more than actually seeing the dog itself. Once I realised it wasn't a threat and it slept, I wasn't that. In fact, I was kind of hoping it would follow me for a few days, but it couldn't. It was
Yeah.
the whole, what the fuck did it see in the desert?
Yeah.
What did it run towards barking? There's nothing out there.
Did
No
you,
animal.
Did you not take a look because it was like sunlight a little bit? Did you just shut yourself and you were like, I'm not getting out of this thing again?
I just remember hearing and listening to it running off in the distance. I know what direction,
Yeah.
but I don't remember taking a look now.
Fairs.
I don't think it hit me straight away.
Mm.
I think even it took like half an hour, and then I was like,
Your
what
guard
the
was
fuck was it
lowered
barking at?
after having the dog in there.
Yeah,
in the
and
first
so I
place,
wasn't
yeah.
really spooked, and the sun was rising, and so I
Yeah.
wasn't really scared at that point. It was only afterwards that I was like, what the fuck was that barking at? What the fuck was in that desert with me? You know? Weird. So
Man.
yeah, speaking of, so I would say I'm not superstitious, but there's been weird things that have happened to me that I can't.
Yeah.
And I did tell myself that I was kind of like, you're gonna put yourself out there. You're gonna travel. You're gonna have to be open to new experiences, and you will probably come across stuff that you can't explain.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there was certainly some of them, and still unexplainable to this day.
Fair enough. I mean,
Unless you have any, unless
We have
you,
so many stories.
We actually do.
I mean,
we're not getting
from-
into
We'll do that on the second podcast.
Just a couple of things that I had on Mongolia and stuff before
Yeah.
we move on to Madagascar. Just like there was one moment when I was watching the documentary where you're eating the apple and you were doing it hardcore with a knife.
Yes.
To make it cool there, but like I'm talking about like the mental aspect of it, where you were like Mongolia won't break me, and then you kind of did like a shake of the head and you're like it won't break me.
With a smile.
Yeah,
right?
with a smile, like a
Yeah.
crazy madman. Like, was that? I don't know. Just watching that, having watched obviously the rest of the documentary and
Yeah.
reading the book and stuff. Like, I don't know. Like that point kind of stood out to me as like a mental hurdle that you kind of just like. It's kind of like, you know what? Fuck it. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it, and just nothing's gonna stop me. Like I've already done. I don't know how far you were along the journey at that point, but I'm sure you'd gone through some shit.
I was about 3-4 weeks at that point.
Yeah. So that kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah,
That
it stuck out to me too. I remember actually on the day, I remember feeling unstoppable because I then started to
Yeah.
realise I was much more capable than I gave myself credit for,
Yeah.
which I think is important as humans, just to understand that. It was at that fucking point I had pulled that trailer over the Altai Mountains. I had locals saying that there's wolves hunting up ahead and that you would be eaten alive. I was still alive. And the wolves are now behind me. I'd faced that wife offering. I'd faced snow blizzards. I had faced the blisters. I'd faced toenails popping off. The reason as well why I was eating the apple with the knife. Do you know the reason?
Was it too much energy to like bite it through? Or
No,
was
it was so because of the altitude and the cold wind, my lips were chapped. So
Oh right.
in the
yeah,
morning,
yeah,
I would usually have to ply my lips from each other,
That's disgusting.
and there would be pus and blood.
Yeah.
And that would be a flow of pus blood into my ration pack that I would
Yeah.
drink in the morning, you know.
That's disgusting.
And I remember I couldn't get my lips and
Yeah.
my teeth over that apple, so it was just
Fair.
bit by bit. But I do remember thinking, but that was before I faced the desert. Before I faced that Gobi stint, I remember thinking, fucking, I've got this.
Coolest nickname ever, by the way, Lonely Snow Leopard.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
UFC nickname if I've ever heard one.
Word.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
a cool
epic.
one, isn't it?
That was epic. Yeah.
Yeah, until I
Yeah.
found out the reason.
This was interesting. You know, if you had some evacuation,
Yeah.
do you think you would have quit?
Do I think I would have?
Because you would have had an easy way out. Because you did mention like, hey, if I want to leave here, 4 days logistic manager, etc., to get here to where I am, 3 days, etc. So you know you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But if you had evac, what do you think?
It's a good question. I think how foolhardy I was back then, I would have probably been stupid and died before calling for evacuation. But it's easier said than done, knowing at the state that I was in that I could be evacuated and how desperate I was for water.
Yeah.
I think I would have.
It's just so much easier when you have a way out.
Yeah.
Like, when your back's against the wall and you don't have
Yeah.
a choice, that's
Yeah.
you were saying at the beginning, adversity, stress.
Yeah.
that brings-
I
brings
think
out
it
the best
was
in you.
it was do or die, and I do think if it wasn't for the previous adventures, I also would have died. I think at that point, I know I was only so young, but I had faced sleep deprivation. I faced dehydration. I faced starvation. I faced being in the ring fighting locals at 40 degrees Celsius. I'd put my body through quite a bit. Whereas if I just went from
North Wales to
Britain, I would have died.
Snowden's not covering the Altai.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think it is thanks to those previous sort of track habits and experiences that I built up.
Do you think we'll see those deep dark clips? Because you mentioned them and you referenced them, but they're probably hidden away in your little VHS vault. GoPro footage.
They're hidden away. They are hidden away, and I
you
didn't put
don't
them in
like
the
to-
documentary either.
Yeah.
So you probably realise that actually I kind of breezed over the Gobi Desert.
Yeah.
Like it's much worse in the book and what I talk about then in that documentary, because there was just certain clips I was like, I just can't have myself like that out
You said
there
that
to
in
the public
Madagascar
eye.
as well, where you had those angry clips at the end of the day. You'd record them and then you'd sort of take that energy,
Yeah.
and then you twist it around and just drive. And
Yeah,
drive
you know what?
forward.
I think I record deleting a few as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I remember just looking back days later and even thinking, I don't even want no editor to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible when you look back and see yourself in that state.
Mm.
It's not nice for myself, let alone thinking if my parents see me like that, and then if strangers see me like that.
Yeah.
It's I just remember thinking I would prefer for that never to be seen.
Could you describe what was going through your head in those types of moments?
I just remember in Mongolia, I just remember just being very desperate and very frustrated, very angry, almost like I didn't have the energy to cry, so I would show it in anger and frustration and pain and feeling for myself. Yeah, I still remember having that dogged mentality of wanting to complete it, wanting to like get through this. I remember hating the desert. It's almost like I personified the desert and I wanted to punch it in the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was this weird sort of distaste to the situation that I was in. And if anything, I was wasting more energy by doing that, you know? But then it got to a point where I was just looking around, like putting my head in my hands and almost too exhausted to cry. It was weird. It was super. And when I look back on that, I was just watching myself, watching the way that I was breathing, watching the way that I would struggle to just sit up, you know, seeing how skinny and bony I was. And there's some stuff that maybe in the future I will get over, and I will let that, you know, I will drop some of those out there. But I think I need, before I do that, I think people need to know me before they would see that.
For sure.
Because then they'll realise that that's not me what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And this is me that they're seeing.
Did
Because
you-
even when I look, I don't recognise myself.
Did you ever lie to yourself out on these adventures to get yourself through these situations? Sell yourself a fake dream, sell yourself a lie just to get you through the hardships, like these exact moments that you're talking about.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell myself a lie, but I would tell myself the pros and the cons of whether I complete this and not complete it. And I remember weirdly for Mongolia, you know, this wasn't the biggest expedition, but in my eyes it was, because I had never faced such a trip before. All of my previous adventures were with my best mate, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously with the Yangtze, that was a lot bigger, but I was a lot more experienced and a lot more hardened to these environments and survival situations. Whereas Mongolia, I wasn't. I'd never come across a desert before. Didn't know how I would face isolation, dehydration, being stalked by wolves, being lonely for such a long time. So all of this was like big question marks. But I do remember being in my house when I was planning it, like a couple of months before I set off for Mongolia, feeling pumped and excited, but then also looking into the future, thinking, fucking hell, I'm gonna face some shit. And I remember getting my phone out then and giving myself a voice memo, and I gave myself a stern talking to. And I really wanted this, you know, I really wanted Mongolia, because I did believe that maybe it could change the course of my future, my career, everything, and maybe I'd be financially better off because of it. And I remember I told myself I would only listen to that voice memo if I was desperate. But if I can get through the whole trip and I don't need to listen to it once, perfect. And I did listen to it once. And it was that time in the Gobi where I was slowly dying. And I pulled out positive Ash, who was in you know, in his house with his parents, with a cup of tea there, with his cheese on toast, and, you know, happy days. Because I didn't stop forgetting why I was doing this, but I just wanted to hear my positive self, because positive was far from what I was right now, you know.
Yeah.
And I played it, you know. I think I smiled listening to it, and I remember just focusing on that one option, remembering Ripley's quote on the end of that email. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, focused on the option that I have, which was to survive. So I think that helped, which is funny because a lot of people seek outside motivation, you know, which is also good to do, and sometimes I do that, but I also try to, because I don't think anyone can motivate you as much as you can motivate yourself, because it's only you that knows why you want this. No one wants it as bad as yourself, and so that's the method that that's the concept that I took, was I have to motivate myself. And when I'm out there, I probably will forget, in all the haze and the sort of being delirious and being in that pain and agony, I probably will forget the positives of completing this.
Are you familiar with Miyamoto Musashi by any chance? He was a Japanese Ronin, samurai, and I believe he never lost a battle. Big philosopher.
Yes.
And he talks about, I paraphrase the quote here, but he talks about how anything that you ever need in life, seek it from within yourself, because there's nothing outside of yourself that can give you the power to move forward. Everything is found within. So that's kind of
love it. Yeah, that's bang on. That's so true.
Yeah.
And many people, especially in this day and age, they just don't know that.
Yeah.
They just don't know that. I think it's because it's so easy to switch on our devices now and get motivated through other means.
Yeah.
And it's easier that way. If you're going to do it internally, you've got to really sit down and think. And it's almost a form of meditating in a way without meditating.
Yeah.
And I remember, that reminds me of Miguel in Mexico, a Mexican guy who joined me on the Yangtze, that's how I first learned about this guy. He is a big fan of like the Japanese and samurai and all of this and that story, and he is huge on meditating, and he joined me, and he said to me that I must have meditated my way without realizing, because I don't know how to meditate. I've never really been taught, and he says there is no way you can complete this without meditating. And he says, I don't mean sit down and cross your legs and put your hands up and meditate that way. He said that because he went through such pain. He only joined me for a week and a half, I think it was, maybe 2 weeks, and he was in agony. And he said he slipped into a deeper form of meditation than he did at home, you know, in his own tranquil place with the right music. And he said if he didn't have that, he wouldn't have been. He was like, so you don't realize that you've probably actually slipped into you call it meditating, but you're effectively slipping into such a zone, flow state that you forget everything else and you just focus on this task ahead.
Just
and if
don't think.
And I was putting in the mile. I think one day I covered, I'm pretty sure it was 70 kilometers in a day, you know.
That's insane.
Just under 50 kilometers,
50 miles, just under 50 miles, which is a hell of a distance. And I remember doing the calculation. That's like from North Wales, where I live, all the way to Chester, and a little bit back.
A little bit back.
And a little bit back. Yeah, just a good measure. And I think he's right. I never knew myself, and I would never have known had it been for him not joining me on that trip. But it was, that's too true. You got to focus internally.
Just back from a quick little break there, but let's pick up where we left off. So now let's talk about the Yangtze mission, 352 days, 4,000 miles.
That's the one.
That was. You always say Madagascar was like the one that really was the hardest in terms of all the stuff you had to go through. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah.
But how was the Yangtze then compared to the other two?
Yeah, the Yangtze was just a different beast altogether. I really don't think I anticipated it to be that difficult. And you know, to break down some of the difficulties. The first attempt to find the source of the Yangtze. This was the true and scientific source of the Yangtze, only mapped in 2009. Yeah, 2009.
Wow.
Which is crazy to think. And it was the same guy that mapped the traditional source. It's just he was then partnered up with NASA, and he was able to correct his wrong and then find the true and scientific source. And so before we got there, we had already lost 4 members of the team. Due to altitude sickness, fear of wildlife. Like, they were fine. They abandoned the trip. And then it was a first failed attempt of the source. And a day before we reached it, I had a Tibetan guide with me, and he was there as a local to help translate, but also there to help me get off the mountains in case I got altitude sickness. But it reversed, and he got altitude sickness, and I needed to get him off the mountains. And so that set me back another 2 weeks because I needed to regroup with a stronger team. And so already we've not even made it to day one. It's been 4 days trying to get to day one of the 352 day, and we've lost 4 members, and I've not even started.
Yeah.
You know, and then we get to the source, and we are following this trickle, you know, the Yangtze River, but it's literally just a trickle. It's crazy to think that it's so small you can step over it.
Wow.
But yeah, where it pours into the East China Sea, it's almost 10 miles wide, and you've got cruise liners.
10 miles wide.
Almost 10 miles wide.
That's amazing.
Which is
Holy
insane. And here I am, like, scooping, drinking from it, stepping over it.
That's cool.
Yet
That's
4,000
amazing.
miles from now, it's going to be fucking huge.
That's pretty amazing. You literally saw it every step
Yeah.
of the journey.
Yeah.
It slowly increase in
Honestly, I
volume.
swear there was some sort of bond with the Yangtze, because I did see it from its little trickle,
Yeah.
from its infancy, and just saw it grow and grow and get bigger. The different sort of villages and communities to towns to cities through all of the different provinces. And I saw it being, neglected in a way and vandalized in a way, and, just abused in many ways along the way too. It was weird. And it was the way that I was in China, right? And they love dragons. And I remember it was one interview that I did, and it is really what I felt, but I was almost had to describe it to them in a way that the Yangtze was like a dragon, because it kept chewing up and spitting out every member that joined me. Up to when I was 6 weeks in, of the 16 people that joined me, 10 of those just couldn't last.
Wow.
Fucking hell, man.
And I was just constantly being battered by the Yangtze, and that was the first time I was on the phone, satellite communications with my dad. I had been threatened with deportation by the Tibetan police, who had taken me in and questioned me at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd already faced 5 police encounters. It was dropping into minus 20, well on its way to minus 40. I was over 5,100 meters altitude, which is similar altitude to Mount Everest base camp. There were wolves, and it was now closing into bear hunting season. So as they're looking for calories before they go into torpor, which is their version of hibernation. Lost loads of members. Had my team on the phone saying abort the expedition, try again next year. And it was at that point, with all of this craziness, I was on the phone to my dad, and that was the first time I said to him and to myself, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing? I really had to dig deep. And whilst I was on the phone to him, the police didn't drop me back where they picked me up from.
Oh, yeah.
They drove me 20 miles back on myself
Wow.
to where there was a bridge, and they said, this is Tibet, that is Qinghai, I don't want to see you in Tibet again. It was all bollocks. And I had to cross the bridge, but we had Castor Choi, the horse, that the film crew ditched us with. the horse was there for the film crew, and they were like, fuck this. There was a bear walking around right where they were, like a day before, and a local had told them that, and they were spooked, and they were like, we didn't sign up for bears, we're done. And they literally left 3 days before we made the source of the Yangtze.
Wow.
And so all of this madness just got to me, and so we had to drop one guide off, and then the police dropped me 20 miles back. So this guy has to, Tudor his name was, he had to navigate his way back, just follow the river back, but he had to run 20 miles, gallop 20 miles. I'm sure it was in only a couple of hours before sunset, and he had no food, no tent. He had to do it, he had to make it. And I remember all of this going on, and it's over crazy terrain as well. And I was just on the phone thinking, what the fuck am I doing? I've got 350 days left. I'm on day 6. It was insane.
Yeah.
It was just insane. So I do say Madagascar, pound for pound, I think there was no day's rest. With Madagascar, it was 155 days. But there was crocodile-infested rivers, there was the deadliest strain of malaria, there was being held at gunpoint by the military, there was avoiding the bandits, there was hunting and gathering through the jungle, there was the chicken called Gertrude, there was spider bites that infected, there were leeches that I had to physically ply off my skin and flick them out the tent. I don't think there was a day in Madagascar that was just that was a nice day's hike. None of that. And that was the same with the Yangtze, but the Yangtze did ease up. You know, the dragon was eventually tamed, domesticated, stopped spitting people out, and people could join me.
You did 8 million steps, I think you did. You mentioned.
I think, I think by the time the police messed around with me and like fucking just dropped me off at random places, it was probably over.
I was looking back at my Fitbit and I was like, back in 2021, I did 2 million steps.
And
I was like, he did 4 times all that. And I was like, oh, that's way. And you did it every single, like, you know, more or less every single day.
I remember on WeChat, which is their version of WhatsApp, it has a step count, and mine stopped counting. I figured out at, I'm sure it was something weird like 94.3 thousand steps, and it just stops counting from then on.
You broke a step meter.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's all in competition with each other on WeChat, and there was just, as long as I was on the Yangtze, no one was going to beat that. You know? People were running marathons, doing all of this, but they're not beating. And I was like number 1 place, and people were just writing, "Can't wait for Ash to finish it." And then I did, and then I was like right at the bottom of the list again.
You know what was crazy was, I don't know if you thought about this. Tell me if you have, but. You went in 2019, right? It was pretty much the duration. Was it calendar year 2019 or was it?
It was 2018 to 2019.
Okay, 2018 to 2019. And if you think about what happened in 2020, you actually went through, didn't you?
Yeah, I was there for a few weeks.
And that must have been, at what stage of the journey was that then, would you say? Can you put a date on that?
Yeah, that would have been, I think that would have been May or June
2019. That was like what? 6 months before
basically before
that was
before the C word.
That was about 4 or 5 months before their first recorded case in China.
Have you ever thought I don't know, have you thought about it? You must have, right? Yeah That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure maybe there was some stuff going around because they tried to keep it under wraps, didn't they, for a long time. But it came out in November of 2019. So I could have been there a similar time to whilst was roaming and getting out and about around that city.
I just saw that.
And the reason I say that is there was photos taken by the weeks of a car park in one of the biggest hospitals in, and I'm sure it was May, June time where all of a sudden it's that car park is full. It's full of cars for the hospital, you know. It's like, and all the time it was kind of like 50% consistently for a very long time, and then all of a sudden come one of those months, and I remember it was a month that I had just been there or just left from there, it was all of a sudden full, and then a few months after that, that's when they were like, there's cases in China. Yeah, so weird. And I remember actually on the news they were showing like these, it's the media, it's what they do, they were showing these dirty, dusty, impoverished streets of is a money place. It is a big hustling, bustling city, beautiful too. Every single night they have the whole city on both sides of the Yangtze, because the Yangtze runs through the city. They have a skyscraper light show. Wow. So it's not fireworks they have all of these skyscrapers going off, all flashing the same colours like across the whole city.
That's night.
Beautiful, man.
Every night. From like
wild.
And yet they show these dirty manky little street people eating on the side little rice. It's like, it is not like that. It is a money city.
Yeah,
insane,
I mean,
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You it was wolves, bears. You went across a lot in that journey, didn't you?
There was a lot. It was almost like 2 different trips in one, because the first 6 months was it was pretty wild. It was survival. It was, I think bears have got to be, that's my biggest fear, I would say.
We'll get to that.
On any expedition. And I remember it was super demoralizing, you know. People would join me and I'd be like, yes, you know, I've got people with me for a few weeks, I'm not alone, because that would get to you, because a lot of the time it was fucking boring. You've got to put in the miles. And I remember my UK photographer Martin, who flew out to Yushu, still deep in the mountains far west of China, and he was going to join me for 2 to 3 weeks, and I remember buzzing, you know, yes, and he's a photographer, so he's going to get some wicked shots too. And he lasted 6 hours on day number 1.
Wow.
And that was it. And I just remember thinking, fucking, and that was because I had a landslide. There was a big landslide that had happened maybe the night before we got there, and it was the only way. I had to like navigate, go on top, around, but it was all still sketchy. The only way above that is like add an extra few days perhaps and go right around the range. But I couldn't do that. It's a year for me. I don't want to add any more days than I have to. And then I said I scouted 2 options, and I was like, look, man, there's no ego here. There's no pride. I need you to be fully honest with me. This is what I do. This is my profession. You're out of your comfort zone here. I'm going to show you these 2 different options, and I need you to tell me, because I don't know what your capabilities are. I need you to tell me if you can do one of these options. And don't lie, don't say, yes, I can do this long, because I'll see it on your face. I'm a lot more experienced now than when I was 19, 20. You know, I can just tell with people. And I say, and at that point, it will probably be too late to do anything anyway. Yeah. And then I left him to it for about 15 minutes to scout the 2 options. And he came back and he made the right choice. He was there saying it's not worth the risk. He's got a wife and child at home. He's not sure if he can do it, therefore he doesn't want to risk it. And I was like, top man, let's go back to Yushu, the city where I collected him from. Let's spend a day there, so it's not a wasted trip for you. And then, you know, I'll see you home. And then I did, and then I cracked on then.
What's that fine line then between ego, arrogance, and confidence, and being crazy?
Yeah, and it's a funny one, because it was probably the Yangtze where I learned all of this, to be honest. I don't give myself enough credit for what I've done. I don't know what the word, you know, when you achieve something but you just don't see it as a big deal. What's the word? There's a word for that, where you downplay your achievements.
Humble.
Or you don't or you don't believe, or you don't think you...
Imposter syndrome sort of thing?
Yes, it's similar to that. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, yeah. Where you do these achievements and you kind of like...
Yeah.
You know, and so I was kind of like, yeah, join me. Come on the Yangtze. And people would see these Instagram posts and be like, wow, it looks beautiful. And then they would be hit by the harsh reality of, fucking hell, this is harder than it... Because it's easy to sit back and see photos and... documentaries and be, you know, he should have done this or he should have done that. I've learned not to do that now, because it's a whole different ball game when you're out there, and I think that was partially the issue. I think I was being too willing and open. Come and join me. People would join me and they would be hit, and it would be the weirdest things as well that would hit people. Just the thought of them being in Bear County sometimes would be like, nah. Just the thought of them waking up in the morning and struggling to put their frosty tent away, where their hands are in so much iron, they're like, no, one day's enough. Or just the thought of the isolation and not knowing what's over that mountain. Wolves, bears, is there people, is there not people? And they'd be like, I don't want to find out, and they bail. So it's fun, and I don't blame them for that. It's what I've come to realise is the experience that I've got is vital for...
It's going to happen once. You said it before we started.
Is vital in order to be able to do these expeditions. Like, I had military men join me and they bailed.
Wow.
And so I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm not saying that, you know, that's how good I am. It's just I have to sometimes put respect on the experience that I've gathered over the years, and need to stop being silly, because I wouldn't dare go into his field as a photographer and then say, yeah, you don't need to explain it. I can do everything as you can. I can't. That's his industry. And that's when I finally realised that. It took me a few months. But then I put a whole close down to the expedition and just stopped people from joining. So I was like, someone's going to die.
What caused the military people to bail?
I think it was a mix of altitude, which can hit anyone, by the way. It really can. And the bears. I think it was realising that they are here in the wrong season. And you know what? I don't blame them, because here's a story that I've never told. I was recently shooting on the Great Wall. And I was with a wildlife expert called Terry, who's a Western guy who lives out in China, has done for decades, loves it there. And he recently filmed a TV show with Ray Mears.
All right.
With Ray Mears. And they were in Qinghai, borderline Tibet, where I was, near where I was doing the Yangtze, not that far up. And Ray Mears wouldn't camp. He would not camp. He was there saying it is reckless to camp, and I don't like bears. And I was like, what? And so he was like, Terry said, yeah, because when I watched your show, because he's seen my show on Nat Geo, and you were camping out there alone, I kind of thought, yes, that's crazy. But then when I was with Ray Mears, and I said, well, you can camp if you want, very hesitantly, Ray was like, no, I am not
Wow.
camping. And that's when I realised that's either stupid or... But then that's when it put into perspective, and no wonder the ex-military other guys were just like, nah, they didn't even want to walk it. But I found that fascinating. I just remember telling her, really? I was like, oh, this is
It's not running wild with
this
beer
is new
grills.
information.
It's running wild with Ash Dykes.
Yeah, because he is a survivalist, and he is
Yeah,
hardcore. Remy
he
is.
is, yeah.
And so it made me feel a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
It's another heat.
Like, there's a
won't
difference in a TV show and a world record. In terms,
Yeah, I guess, yeah, true.
Yeah, so there's that too. In
Yeah.
fairness, but yeah,
count. And I had no choice. It was a case of
yeah.
get on. Well, I did have a choice. I could have just not done the trip, but you know what I mean.
Once you're there.
Yeah. But that was full circle, wasn't it? That because you started your youth travels in China. That's where you wanted to go first.
Yeah.
You then did Yangtze.
Yes.
And then you went back for the Great War. So it's kind of like full circle over the space of a decade, or, give or take.
Weird, super weird.
yeah.
I remember at 19. That was the first ever adventure that I'd done. It was with university students. We were in a minibus. It was very touristy, but it's got to be done. You're in Beijing. You've got to see the Great Wall. I remember I've got a couple of photos, a couple of videos, and I don't know. I just remember leaving China thinking, and looking at the map, and realizing we've just skirted like the coast for 2 weeks. I was like, we've not really travelled China, Matt. And I said I will be back. I didn't realize that there I was, aged 19, stood on the wall, day's hike. That 10 years from now, 11 years from now, I would be filming a 6.1 hour TV show.
Wow.
Arguably, maybe the best documentary of the Great Wall of China to
Very
date. 11 years from now, doing all of these crazy, wacky adventures, 21,000 kilometers.
That
And
is, sorry, I was just going to say, that is the best part to me personally, because it seems like, at least in the book, is the moment when you're eating these wacky stuff and you're like, hold on a second, this is what everybody else does.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you had that realization in China to then loop back all the way with all the experience now to come back with the whole Great Wall stuff.
Yeah, man.
So that's
you're
the coolest thing.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing.
Yeah, and I don't think it's sunk in yet. I think it will hit once it's aired, and then I think it will really hit and be like, fucking hell.
When is it airing?
I'm doing the voiceovers at the end of this month. And I think, depending on the channels, we've secured the biggest platform in China, which is amazing. Tencent.
Dope.
Wow.
We've got Insight TV, which is an app where people can view it from all over the world, which is amazing. So people can. It's not like the Yangtze where it's natural Asia, Africa, Middle East.
That was a bit
People will be
annoying,
able, but we're that close from securing a big time UK channel.
Fingers crossed.
That I can't
really?
mention just yet. Yeah, and
Hopefully
if we
soon.
do that, that would just be a game changer. I've been working on this channel for years now.
Hopefully you get it, man.
Yeah.
I am keeping everything crossed. And aired wise, it'll be down to them to make the dates, but I do think it will be the end of this year,
Okay.
at the latest beginning of next. But I'm hoping it will be the end of this year around Christmas time. Hopefully.
Got you.
Cool.
Are there any other countries we left out that you've been to that we haven't covered today? On those travels that just weren't crazy enough to make it.
Yeah. No, I think that is. I think that's Australia. We
It's really
we
good.
spoke about.
Northern Territory and that.
Yeah.
You did mention in the book that you had to hitchhike for a certain amount of time in the Northern Territory.
Yes.
There were some crazy people you met.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so that was reckless. That was a stupid thing to do.
Everything's reckless.
Yeah. So honestly, from like 19 to 23, even though Mongolia, Madagascar, it was like I just did not give a fuck. I was
As you
just,
should, man.
yeah, I was just doing stupid stuff that I look back on and I think, fucking hell.
I've got a friend right now who's actually travelling the entire East Coast that I met when I was backpacking as well, doing the entire east of Australia, like from Perth all the way up to the top. So
from Perth, literally around the whole coast.
Well, not around, just around that whole left side, the whole east side of Australia, just from top to bottom. Yeah.
West, if it's Perth.
West.
Sorry, west. Yeah. West,
Got you. That's the wild side. I never got that
yeah,
side,
yeah.
but that is that's going to be stunning. The west side, fucking hell.
cool.
I was.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
No,
after you.
No, I was just saying, speaking of like, doing crazy things and like crazy journeys, another big journey in your life has been, hopefully, your relationship.
Yeah. Yes.
How does that stop you or fuel you to do more in life? Or has there ever been a point, like for example, I have a girlfriend, if I told her tomorrow I'm going to trek Mongolia, she'd slap me in the face. So how has that been? Has that affected your need to go out and do more?
Yeah.
How's that work for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because Shabs, my girlfriend,
Shout out Shabs.
she wasn't. I didn't know Shabs for obviously Mongolia, Madagascar, and the Yangtze, but I met up with her in 2020.
How did you meet?
The lockdown, Bumble.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bumble.
It works.
It does work.
It works. And it's funny. I'll tell you a story about that. It was my friend Matt, who was Matt, the guy that travelled.
How's he doing? Is he doing well, man?
Yeah, he's doing well. He's back in the
got
UK.
to shout out Matt,
Yeah,
man. He's the OG.
Shout out, man.
To be fair, yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's back in the UK now, married, but he was in Hong Kong as a yacht master. So super yachts, you know.
Oh.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
got some crazy stories as well, fighting off pirates, all of that sort of stuff.
Bring him on.
In the yachts or
in the yacht, yeah. just like-
Pirates of the Caribbean all over again.
Yeah.
I'm the captain.
And he was on Bumble, and he met up with a girl who he's now married with,
Dope.
and then another friend of mine, Gwyn Edwards, met a girl on Bumble.
Just quit your neighbour.
no,
he's still peeking out the window.
yeah. And then he met someone on Bumble who he's married with and has 2 children with, and they were mentioned Bumble. I was like, no. So I got on Bumble, and I met Shabs, and so Shabs was there 2020, so she was a part of the Great War journey, and that was
Nice.
4.5 months. So that was actually longer out in China than it was in Mongolia.
Oh my god.
You put it that way.
And she is, I think with her, she's very ambitious herself, very driven, very focused. And she loves what I do. She's got own separate sort of dreams and goals. And she's just been very supportive throughout it all. And I know that was hard on her, 4.5 months, as it was for me. But it was one of those that she would never try to stop me doing what I do. There's certain barriers, like I do talk about the Congo River.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
And that is one where she's like, you might die. Why would you risk, us and future kids, family, all of that?
Parasites there and stuff.
Yeah,
You
so
talk about Madagascar being a place where 89% is indigenous to that area, but
Yeah.
Congo, it's just so many things there which have
Yeah.
never been seen or discovered by anyone before.
yeah,
It's mental.
yeah, 100%.
Mental.
Yeah, no, there is. I think me and Joe Rogan
Yeah,
got talking
his
for
friend,
ages
his
on the
friend's
Congo.
got,
David
his
Cho
friend who
does
does pygmy stuff out there and helps the pygmies around there.
That's
He's got
right.
a parasite. Justin Wren, his name is, yeah.
That's it, yeah, Justin
he's
Wren,
got
yeah.
a parasite and he doesn't have a clue what
They
it
don't.
is.
They don't
What
know
does
what
the
it is,
parasite
do
do?
they?
At the moment, I don't think it's doing a crazy lot to him, but it's just like giving him like bad health a little bit. But they just can't figure out where it is or what it is because it's a parasite. It's
Yeah.
deep in the jungles of the Congo where
Yeah.
no one's been. That's a
Yeah.
place no one's been.
Yeah, I do think. I like to say that the Yangtze, if I say so myself, was one of those where it's one of the greatest of the decade. I think the Congo River, whoever does that, whoever is the first, but that will probably be the greatest first, one of the greatest first of the century.
Yeah, if we're talking about greatest achievements ever, one that always comes to my mind is Alex Honnold. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He free climbed, free soloed.
Oh,
that
seen the
yeah.
documentary.
What you do, it's also different. It's you can never compare.
Man,
but
honestly, I remember hearing that. I was like, "What's the crack with this? What's the big deal?" I watched it and I was like, "Oh my
It's
god!"
nuts.
I see the big deal. That is insane.
But what you did is, honestly,
Amazing.
Yeah, but
just
I
to
think
say
with-
it's different. But
Yeah, it's different, and I think with
he
what
would never
I,
do what you do, I'm sure. And you
No.
probably never do what he does.
Yeah,
right?
I think you don't want to be a part of that, and you don't want to be. It's one of those. But I do think, with what I do, I think a lot of people see it as daredevilish and reckless, but it's really, honestly, it's meticulous planning. It's attention to detail. It's understanding why people haven't done it before, or where did they fail, and how you can overcome that. And if I wasn't somewhat 100% sure that I could overcome each of the hurdles that I was set with, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there's those safety nets there, maybe not in the earlier adventures, but with climbing a rock face with no rope, you're taking the safety line away, aren't you?
He practiced that for
Insane.
10 years, to be fair to him, that exactly.
Yeah.
And they do say it takes 10 years to master your craft.
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but
and
how-
he visualized, it was interesting how he visualizes every
Yeah,
single
yeah.
he has
he
to.
knew the whole thing by
Yeah,
heart.
and then one day he just woke up, didn't he? I've got it. I'm gonna
Yeah,
do
because
it.
he failed it,
Insane, man.
and then he didn't. He bailed from it.
Yeah.
And then another day he quite literally just woke up. He was like,
Yeah.
"Sod it,
Yeah.
think,
And they
do
did.
not
They
think."
did
again, yeah.
studies, tests on him, right? Where there was
His
no.
amygdala doesn't.
They would
fire.
show him
Yeah.
images, horrific images, and there's something they can see the pupil dilates.
The
or something.
amygdala fires. in the
Yeah,
brain,
that's it.
yeah,
And there was
yeah.
just
Yeah.
nothing.
They say his eyes are dead.
Yeah.
Like his eyes, like he's seen everything. He's
Probably
seen
the
death.
same.
He stared death in the face, essentially. So it's just,
yeah. And I
something
think
that
you
happens
need,
to
I
you.
think you need that to do something like that.
Yeah.
But with what I do, it's definitely more in a relatable way. I hold fear, you know. I see images and I do not like them, you know. And so I think the relation I go for is I hope that when people see what I do, because it's easy to see people who have done world firsts before and be like, yeah, but they're minted, good education, have good contacts, or from a military background. I'm from old Colwyn, no financial background, no university degree to my name, and just learn my craft as I went through experience, through making mistakes and never trying to make the same mistake twice. So it's that message that if I can do it, you can do it. There's nothing whereby, yeah, but he has no fear, or yeah, but there's this or there's that. It's just a case of hard work and really wanting to do something like that.
Yeah. I've got a couple of quick questions to wrap off that I want to kind of let off. Feel free to throw in as well before we wrap this up. One of them was emotions, you know, whether you ignored them or faced them when you were on your trips just to get through the next hurdle, and then being alone for so long on so many of the trips, how has that affected, akin to what Harsh is talking about, your relationships, not only with your girl but with your family, with your friends, with yourself, like your own psyche in that sense? And are there any sort of mental health battles or hurdles, PTSD, anything of that sort that you've faced, sort of, you know, apart from the scary face turning up in your nightmares, which if it does to me, I'm sending you a DM and I'm suing you for emotional damage on that one. But yeah, like how's that been, that whole aspect?
Yeah, the aspect with the sort of mental health, especially on completion of the expeditions, is interesting. And I think it was my mum who clocked on, my mum and dad, but it was my mum who said it to me. She's just noticed that after these expeditions, especially how she's been fearing for my life at stages, and you know what I've seen out there and what I've gone through. It's been a lot of crazy shit. And then I've returned, and she just noticed that my spirit has just never been dampened.
Yeah.
You know, and I come back and I'm just, I remember the negatives, but the positives outweigh the negatives for me. But I do learn from the negatives as well. I'm fully aware that they are there, but no, there's no PTSD, nothing like that, which is interesting, because you would probably think that
something
there would be. Yeah. But if anything, I think I've come back like a bit like that was close. You know, here's how I probably should have done it.
that was a tough one.
Yeah, you know. And so I've just come, and I guess I've always been like that, sort of growing up. And maybe because it's voluntary, you know, rather than in military, it's, you know, harsher sights. You've seen people be blown up and shot.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's also that aspect that maybe some don't really want to be there, or maybe they haven't built up that mental toughness and just don't know how to hack it, or, you know, maybe people are built differently and react differently to different things, right? And I think maybe I'm fortunate enough, whether it was learnt or I was born with it, but I've learnt to sort of face what I face and not let it get to me, you know, and be thankful that I faced it, because I don't hold any regrets, and the mistakes that I've made, I probably wouldn't change them, even though it did almost cost me my life, because it kind of feels like, well, I needed to get there to get to where I am today. And, you know, I've never caught malaria again. I've never been dehydrated again. You know, there's lots of things that I've learned from that.
Got any scars or anything? Any scars? Who's got injuries or anything that's done on you since the travels?
Yeah, I've got like
clean
spider bites, little stuff like that. But yeah, I don't look. Well, unless
don't
you
look
suggest
otherwise.
otherwise.
No, for sure. What's the best piece of advice you've been given on any of your travels? Doesn't have to be the expedition specifically.
Oh
but just
shit,
any
that's
of
a
them.
hard one. Again, there's been lots. What's one that has
Stuck out,
Yeah, what's one that's really stood out? You know what? I think it's more quotes.
Sure.
Quotes that I've seen that have made a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Because there's been many people that I've met and who have said stuff, or maybe they've done stuff and it's changed the course of my direction. You know, one of them was when I was working in Australia as a salesman, sort of selling Australia Power and Gas. You know that story, you know, whereby I was shadowing my boss, and my boss was just eating Red Rooster, I think it was equivalent to KFC. Every morning for breakfast was all about the money. And at that stage I was 20, so I still was all about lifestyle and not really the money. And I remember just putting on weight and in a suit. It was like 30, 40 degrees Celsius, knocking on people's door. And, you know, I was shadowing my boss, who knocked on this guy's door. And he didn't knock on his door. We were approaching, we were walking up the drive, and there was this ripped guy, this black guy who was shredded, topless, doing all of these pull-ups. And I loved that stuff. I loved doing pull-ups, push-ups, training in general. And I remember him jumping down, and we tried to pitch to him, and he was like, you know, I'm not interested in it. I'm in a contract, but I appreciate what you guys do. It's a difficult job to have, and it's hot weather. He wasn't being condescending.
Yeah.
He was just saying, you know, I appreciate you probably having doors slammed on your face all the time. And Jeremy, my boss, just replied, yeah, we get paid a lot of this though, and I drive a Skyline. And I remember thinking that was so pointless to say.
Very egotistical.
It was very egotistical. And the guy replied, it's not all about the money though, it's about the lifestyle. And I literally quit the job a couple of days later. Bought myself a little bicycle and done another adventure. And I think I needed that. It was almost like an invisible backhand across the face. Like, you didn't come travelling to do this, Ash. So there's little things like that, little pointers. Yeah. But I think there's two quotes. I don't remember them word for word. One of them I do. One of them is, the biggest danger in life is not doing what you want to do now in the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later.
Ooh.
I love it. And I love that now more than I did back then, because I've realised everything I did back then I wouldn't want to do now.
Yeah.
So if I didn't do it, I would have never have done it. Because your mindset changes. You know, it's about eating tarantula or drinking snake's blood or doing the world's highest bungee jump. Or luckily, I still am into some of that stuff, but not the snake's blood, because I know that's bad for the animals, bad for the wildlife, bad for the, you know, for the planet and whatnot. But I just think if there's something you want to do, you've got to get it done, because one, you're not guaranteed tomorrow, and two, everything changes. You won't be the same person.
I think that's something we're learning a lot as well. Is like, even with the podcast and everything, it's like, just do, don't think, just do, and then you can figure it out as you go along. And I think that's something we've learned a lot in the past, you know, this second half of the journey so far, than we did in the first. And I think that's what's compounded so much growth, and just like we've just gotten so much better because of that mentality. So for sure. Action.
Yes. Isn't it? It's acting on something, it's getting shit done. So I think that, and another one that really hit me was, I don't know word for word, and I don't know whose quote this is, but it was on the wall when I was younger, and it was, life shouldn't be a journey to the grave with the intention of attracting an attractive and well-preserved body, but rather to slide in sideways, covered in scars, battered, body thoroughly used up, screaming, you know, woohoo, what a ride. And I was like, that's so true. And I get you want to, you know, you want to be attractive, look after your body. I'm all about that. I'm all about routine in terms of hydrate, eat the right foods. But at the same time, you've also got to look at gaining rich experiences and use your body. You know, I'm probably a little bit spiritual, whereby, you know, we've got this outer shell, we've got this body. Why not use it? Why not get it a little bit battered and push its limits and do all of that and explore different parts of the world? And so I think those two were the most impactful potentially when I was younger.
Great quotes, to be honest. Great quotes.
Yeah, brilliant.
One more question for me. Coffee with one person, dead or alive. Who would you want to sit down with? And
coffee, did you say?
Yeah,
coffee.
Do you drink coffee?
Yes.
Oh,
there you go.
Or Kazakh chai.
Kazakh chai. Good things come out of Kazakh chai.
Do you want to be?
That's a good question. I've never really thought about that.
Because you talked about some of your idols like Branson and McGregor, and there was a guy who circumnavigated the globe, South African guy, I think he was, and things like that. But, what's one that sticks out to you? Because you did mention that you never really followed these type of people. You kind of just did your own thing, and just happened that these people.
I never really took outside. I took tell a lie. I didn't take inspiration from one person, especially from the industry that I'm in. But I took lots of inspiration from lots of different guys outside of the industry and in the industry, but even business people. I was just like, fucking hell. I tried to take little nuggets from different people doing great things. But that, you know what? It's weird as this is what pops to my mind now. Is I think it has to be one of the first Homo sapiens, whereby I could actually communicate with.
Yeah.
So many, you know. I think
you're essentially doing a similar thing. Like you're migrating. I mean, the Homo sapien will be like migrating from one end of the world to the other, like
Yeah.
settling, all these kind of things, and you're basically doing it in the modern era. But yeah. like-
Yeah, I would almost like to be thrown back. But then saying that, I would look, like millions of years ago,
Yeah.
the different sapiens,
Yeah.
you know, the different species of humans that were living back then. And although I couldn't communicate, I'd love to just be a fly on the wall, just like fucking,
Yeah,
just
the
see how that
crap
was back then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
beautiful.
but I don't know. If it was to sit down with someone, but I don't. I think I would have to say.
That's fair.
They'd have the
Yeah.
try,
Leave
the
it
try,
with us,
and be their mind would
They think it's magic.
obliterate. They think it's magic.
Then blow up in smoke.
Yeah. And it's like that stuff always like history fascinates me, but ancient history is like that does it more for me.
I'm sure Genghis would have looked at your journey and been like, "One, nah."
Yeah. What a crazy man.
Well, even bigger than that, was the hardest geezer. You've seen him running across
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah.
You guys seen that? The ginger
Oh
guy?
yeah, the guy's
Oh,
nuts.
he had to
He's-
stop
Yeah, well, he's doing it. He's back on the road again.
again.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's peeing blood and
Yeah.
black and stuff like that.
Yeah,
You had
yeah.
with heat stroke in Mongolia, similar, but
Yeah.
he's back on the road again. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Nutter,
fucking
running
hell.
on tarmac, marathon every day.
That's crazy, man.
It would always blow my mind when, like, every day he would show his update, and then
Yeah.
they would zoom out to the map of how much he had left,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like this far into Africa.
Yeah, he's going for all of it, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will he be taking on the Congo, running?
I think he's going to
He goes-
basically skirt around the left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you've got to
and
follow
then-
the road. That's the thing with marathon, isn't it? You've got to
Yes.
be. But there's not going to be
'Cause
road the
he's
whole
do-
way, surely.
He's doing it from the, so you got Africa here, right? He's doing
Yeah.
it around the left, and then he's skirting around this way. So he's basically not touching the center of it. He's not going through like Mali or anything like that. He's skirting around the coast of it, around the outside, through Western Sahara, Morocco,
Got
Libya,
ya.
up to Tunisia there,
Got
rather
ya.
than going straight through the jungles in the middle and the desert in the middle, more like the urban life.
Yeah.
Like that, which, fair enough, really, if you're running the whole of bloody
you're
Africa.
running,
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you know, you need to stick to, and that's kind of, it's funny because that's what made me want to get off the roads and do more survival, because
Yeah.
I found that where there's roads, there's people. If there's people, there's food, there's water, there's safety, which is
Yeah.
good. And if you're doing a marathon and you're running, you need that,
Yeah.
and you need people to be able to come in and out as well. You know, with depots or masseuses or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But with me, it was almost the opposite. I was kind of like, how the fuck do I get off the road where I see more people and out into the fucking wilderness
Yeah.
where you'd need to rely then solely on yourself to survive, you know?
Yeah.
It was, but yeah, fucking hell. How long's he got left?
I've no idea. I think he's probably about 20% of the way through, maybe.
Got you.
Just when I picture the map in his head and his line that he's done.
Yeah.
So yeah, no idea how long it'll take him.
Crazy,
I'm
man.
rooting for him. He's
So
got
yeah.
it.
Yeah, man.
He's got it.
You guys got any questions? If not, we can jump into things.
I've
If you
got one.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
want to go first?
Yeah, just a real
Okay.
quick one, just for River Yangtze. So, the bit when you sort of visualized the word impossible when you were obviously like dehydrated in the Gobi Desert,
Yeah.
is there any other examples of like sort of abstract or visualization which has helped you push through, other than obviously you talk about how like you like to break things down, like the 100-meter example that you've
Yes.
referenced before? Was there any examples in Yangtze at least where you had to visualize something to help you get through it, or an abstract word you thought of, like impossible version 2? Don't know.
Yeah, I actually with Madagascar, I do remember one that me and Max were using, and it sounds like nothing now, and it was just tomorrow is another day,
Right.
and we said that because we were so obliterated, so battered in the jungle, exhausted, bleeding, hungry because there's only so much hunting and gathering that we could do. We hated being in the jungle, and it was the jungle that I learned that you can't always be motivated, but you can be disciplined. Yeah, that was a hard way to learn it. I
Sure.
kind of, because I didn't know how to put it into words, and then I realized, well, it's actually a thing and people say it. But then it was a case of I just don't have any motivation whatsoever. But staying disciplined, and I remember hacking through the jungle 50 meters at a time, I think it was, and then sharing hacking duty because we got blisters on our hand from the machete. And I do remember that was just, sometimes we wouldn't even say goodnight. It would be tomorrow is another day, and that was it. And then that next day, hopefully we have a better day, but we wouldn't. And then it'd be a case of just saying it again and saying it again. But the Yangtze, I had goals in terms of I really had to break down that trip, and I had to focus on the next village or the next community.
Right.
or a section of like the border of the province, whereby then it starts to get gradually warmer from that point onwards. And I would just remember, or the first bend of the Yangtze, that was a big one for me.
Right.
The first bend of the Yangtze is where I could then open it back up, have people join, because it's safe. There's no bears, there's no wolves, there's no isolation.
Yeah.
So that was a big visualization point for me.
Sure.
For sure.
Cool.
Okay, mine. I want to go back in time a little bit to when you contrasted your Mongolia trip, where everything was solo, you're on your own, to now in Madagascar with guides, and especially your relationship with me. And when I was reading,
I didn't know
Are
you.
you?
no, I was,
It's like the rush hour scene where he's like,
when I was reading your book, I don't know why, but I got a very big feeling that it's similar to, if you've ever read the book, we read it in school, of Mice and Men, where the main two characters, George and Lenny, are very different in their like characteristics, in how they go about their lives.
Right.
But together, subconsciously, they almost work off of each other and need each other without realizing. And to me, that was like the epitome of your relationship with me, where you would drive each other insane, but at the end of the day, it was, you were feeding off each other's energy.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, like, now in any other adventures you've been on, or what you're looking for in the future, is this something that is actually quite valuable to you?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, and you're right. Looking back, although he frustrated the fuck out of me, he became my brother, effectively, my Malagasy brother, and we still keep in touch on Facebook.
That's cool.
Really?
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
we still
beautiful.
keep in touch. I then went out. I led a trip for charity challenge.
that must have been
was-
surreal.
that
I was
was
going to
cool.
ask you about that. Yeah, that must have been surreal, yeah.
And everyone gave him a big sort of generous tip at the end of it, and all of the porters, and I felt like that was good. That's me doing my bit, giving back. They supported me. Now I'm trying to support them in return. And yeah, he was an alcoholic, and he was very scared of the south. No one really goes south. It's warned against it. And as we were traveling down south from the capital, we would come across buses that had bullet holes in and was set on fire. You know, people die every day down south. Not supposed to say that as tourism ambassador, but maybe avoid the south slightly of Madagascar. And so he would get scared of the bandits, but we would sort of seek out communities, and the sheriff of the community, sounds old school, doesn't it? But the sheriffs of the communities would advise us where they think the bandits are. But he had in his mind that the bandits would kill him, take me, and hold me ransom to get money from the government. And a lot of the time he would then end up drinking through the fear, and then he would end up crying and saying these, he would communicate to me in English how I'm going to die and how
We
he's
suffer
going to
more
die.
in imagination than in reality. Is
Yeah.
it that comes to
Yeah,
mind?
right.
Yeah.
And so he had a right to be fearful, but it was almost like the alcohol made him 10 times worse, and that was horrible for me as a Western to be there, knowing that I need guides that can support and sort of help me through this mentally and physically, and he just couldn't until he could. It was very much like that until I got used to his shit, and I was just like, here we go again. But then the next day, he'd apologize. Oh man, I had too much to drink, and then he would laugh about it and be like, just hydrate. And then we would crack on. But yeah, it was one of those whereby it got to a point where I got a different guide called Joe for the middle section, and me had to go home, but he didn't want to stay. But I was on a budget and I didn't have money to pay him. I was like, well, you can't stay because I don't have money. He was like, I will join you for free, because he just like bonded with me. He was having a bit of an adventure himself. He was facing like certain scenarios which he was like, oh my god, I think this is a little bit fun. And he took to it, and I really liked having him there with me. And it was actually Joe was the one that he kept saying Kinjanin to me. Every time he got annoyed with me, he said Kinjanin, which means motherfucker in Malagasy. And I figured that out. And he was a bit of a pain, he was. And I sent him home. Yeah, he fucked me. I've never had to send anyone home.
Yeah.
Just because they've annoyed me. But Joe was the guy that annoyed me, and I sent him home. And
He's the kindred.
I kept saying it once I learned. I was like, you're kindred. And then it was just me and me again. Yeah. So we were solid.
That's crazy.
That's a great story.
That's really good.
That's amazing.
All right.
I did actually have one last question.
Yeah.
And as a person that's you mentioned being spiritual, you mentioned like the law of attraction and things like this, and with that in mind, would you say you found yourself through all these journeys and stuff, or would you say like, and at this point, like, would you say you've become like someone that knows themselves completely, or do you think there's something that every human just learns as they go along, like the whole journey, the whole way?
Yeah, I think it's the whole journey, the whole way. I've sped up the process, so I've learned a lot about myself through what I've faced. Like a lot about, like even niggles that I'm kind of like, fuck, surely I didn't do this in front of people, because they get well annoyed. So by being forced in isolation, I think one of you guys asked the question, but being forced in isolation, it's kind of made me a better person to be with my girlfriend or to be around other people, because there was certain stuff that I would do. I can't even think of what. There was just certain niggles or stuff that I knew wouldn't be nice around people that I would do, that no one was there to call me out on my bullshit. And then if people do call you out on your bullshit, you just ignore them. Oh, you're being silly. But if there's no one there to call you out on your bullshit, and then you get annoyed, and then you're kind of like, fucking hell, if I'm getting annoyed with myself, surely everyone else will get annoyed with it. And then you nip that stuff in the bud. And then you learn to become more patient, more tolerant. You learn that people have different stress levels, different difficulties and weaknesses, and, you know, just go with that, because I too had different weaknesses and different difficulties. And I think by knowing myself, by doing solo trips, it makes me a better person to do team trips. And I remember in Madagascar, especially up north, we were all very demotivated, demoralised, lost all morale to just be there. But I remember wanting to be the leader. I remember drawing back on experiences that I had in Mongolia and thinking, it's nice that I'm not facing these harsh experiences alone. And I would say little stuff that would be helpful in the morning. Honestly, just to say good morning in the morning is nice, because I remember no one said good morning to me in Mongolia. You know, I'd wake up alone, I'd sleep alone for a long time, 8 days alone before seeing even a single human. And I was like, I've got these 3 people with me now, plus a chicken. Just say good morning, even if you realise. And that's another thing, I realised that I was always first to say good morning, and then that started to annoy me, because you're out in the jungle, little things annoy you, you know, and you're like, they should also wish me a good morning. And then that stuff I got rid of. I'm like, they're having a difficult time, they haven't faced this before, this is new to them. And so I think I've learned a lot about myself that's made me better. And I don't think I could be in. I think Shabs wouldn't be able to tolerate me. If it was like 4 years ago, she'd be like, I'm sick of your shit. So I've done some learning, done some changing and developing, and so has she, and we met each other at the right time.
Perfect.
But I do think there's still so much I haven't faced that I will always still learn, and I think you should always keep learning to the day that you die, you know.
100%.
So
Unless you get hot Cocoa Pops like in Madagascar and get pissed off.
whoa, right.
Unreal, that is.
Can you believe that? I forget about that story. Wow.
I love that.
There's
that
some
story.
PTSD.
One of the funniest stories.
And I never even mentioned it, I don't think, on a podcast.
Yeah, because to me that's like the epitome of like Western civilization.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And like as soon as you realize, you're like, oh shit, they have to do it, otherwise it's not drinkable sort of situation.
And you felt like such an idiot.
Yeah.
Exactly that, right? It's the realization of I've basically just been a dick.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't believe it. And that was I forgot what little town it was, but I saw Cocoa Pops, didn't I? You read? I saw Cocoa Pops, and I was like, I carried Cocoa Pops with me or something. I think I saw them. I was like, oh my god, Cocoa Pops and milk, a little taste of home, you know. So I was like, can I have that and some milk? And they took forever with the milk, and I was hungry. I was like, I want some damn milk with my Cocoa Pops.
As you should.
And they were taking forever, and I was sat there thinking, fucking hell, am I being impatient? And I think they had a fridge, but it was sealed, so I didn't get to see what was inside. And anyway, they eventually bought milk, and it was fucking hot milk. Is that right? It was hot milk.
Yeah, it was hot
boiling
milk.
milk,
Because they had to boil it because it came from the cow.
Yeah, and then I
Pasteurized.
realised they had
Pasteurized.
just milked the cow,
Yeah.
and then had to boil the milk.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
And then I was getting annoyed because they didn't pour some fresh milk out there. And pour that cold milk in my cup. So I'm waiting, like, it must have been 45 minutes at least. And of course they had to milk the cattle, they had to boil it, and
It
and
is
then
wild to think about.
it's crazy to think. And then honestly, every time I come back, to civilization, I'm kind of like, wow, this is so good. You know, you put the toaster down, it's going to pop off. You put the kettle, you can take a shower. You don't need to worry.
Yeah.
Whereas out there, you know, the bare necessities, being dry or having shelter or making a fire is such an ordeal. Honestly, making a fire is a big thing. It can be a problem.
Do you know how to do it with the sticks and stuff? Do you
No.
do that? No, okay.
No.
Just a lighter.
Flint
Flint.
is normally what I go with.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah,
So it
that
would
makes
just
sense.
be flint that I would use, and sometimes if I don't have anything, if there's some sort of natural resources,
Yeah.
like I know how to do it with the sticks, I just have never tried.
Fair.
But I would love to, because I know it would be difficult, but then you get used to it, right?
Yeah.
But
Fair enough.
yeah, no, when I was out there, I was always like, at least take a flint,
Yeah.
and then lighters as well. So in Madagascar, it was super easy because the lads, they would smoke too. Yeah, so they would,
All the time,
yeah, and so, but yeah, it was fucking Cocoa Pops.
And warm milk.
Damn.
Let's go for it.
All right, we can end this off with a little game.
Okay.
So, what we want to do is we want to pose a scenario to you.
Yes.
You're all alone, solo trekking in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and you come up against a raging animal, and they only have sights for you. You have no tools, nothing, just hand to hand. Which one of these, if any, or maybe multiple, would you be able to fend off or beat in a fight?
Okay, so I've got nothing with me.
Just your hands,
Just your bare
fists.
knuckle Muay Thai hands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the first one, in
Yeah.
Thailand, a barracuda.
Oh, barracuda. Yeah, I've been stalked by a barracuda. Fun fact.
There you go.
Okay.
Exclusive.
They love shiny things, and I was doing a night dive, and I think it was something on me that was too shiny, and it kept following me, and then it kept going past my vision, and then I was shining, and then one of the instructors pointed. I think that's the sign for barracuda underwater scuba diving,
Wow.
and he was like, "You watch it." And then I think it was something on my dive watch, and I had to like cover it, and I was still shining because I'd realised it had been following me for at least a minute or two, which is a long time underwater, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What the fuck? Where is this?" Because they could be big, maybe a meter big, maybe over. And then it vanished. But they can attack shiny things, or they can sometimes go for you. And I remember thinking, oh, okay. And then I got up, and the instructor said, "Yeah, it was following me for a while. It was your watch, or it was something around my wrist
Yeah.
that I had to cover. I remember having to cover."
You
Yeah.
taking it?
You knocking one out.
Yeah.
That was an easy one.
They can't take your shiny shit.
Yeah, I think just do that, and it'll stay away.
The next one, which you had a close encounter with,
Yeah.
a jellyfish.
Oh yeah, jellyfish.
Yeah.
I almost descended on it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did?
yeah,
These
yeah.
are all stories I give you. Holy shit, yeah. What would I be able to beat it in?
Yeah. You're taking out underwater as well. You're in there.
It's coming for you. That's nothing
come on,
else.
man.
I could outswim it. So,
Okay.
Okay.
so
That counts.
yes.
That counts, yeah.
Right?
If they see
Yeah, that
movies,
counts.
isn't it?
Definitely outside.
Yeah, I couldn't outswim a barracuda though. I'd have to get my elbows in on that.
The last one of underwater, we have a stingray.
They took out Steve Irwin.
Yeah,
You better than Steve Irwin.
Ooh, that's a question. Stingray.
How are you punching a stingray?
Stab
Can
it.
you outswim a stingray? How fast do they swim?
You can't
They're
outswim it, I
quite
don't think.
fast.
Yeah.
They're quite fast.
I
watch
think
enough Australian
and
YouTubers.
they would be quite slippy, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would.
You'd have to scratch it.
It's got to avoid the
And
stinger
you
though.
couldn't grab its barb, isn't it? It's called a
yeah,
barb.
barb, yeah.
Couldn't grab its barb.
That's a long day, bro.
So I couldn't beat it. I think I could survive it.
Fair.
Right.
How would you?
I think I would have to like hold on to see its wings.
It's little,
Yeah.
I would have to just put a barrier up where it would. That's why I was thinking it would be slippy, wouldn't it? I'd have to just hold it back, keep pushing it back
Yeah.
until I get exhausted and drown.
I'll put that in a maybe pile. Give that one a maybe.
maybe.
All right, now on to the land animals.
Okay.
We start with a Tibetan Mastiff.
Yes.
You knock it out.
I roundhouse kicked a Tibetan Mastiff.
Please tell us that story.
We need to know.
And so this is funny because this is
Peter.
so this is right where. So we were walking in twos. It was me and Kyle, my videographer from Texas, and we were stalked at that point for 2 days by a pack of wolves. But the pack of wolves sensed no weakness. They left us alone. They drifted. And then I was trying to get Kyle to stay with me because I knew this was dangerous territory. And he was like, he had a big shoot for the North Face and he bailed. And so he had to bounce. And then I continued. And it was 2 days after Kyle had left me that I made it back to some form of a track, right? So I'm walking down this track. I can see a gur in the distance, but I wasn't excited by that. I was just like, that's fine. I'm just going to walk by and wave. I didn't need to stop. And I see 2 girls outside the gur with 2 Tibetan Mastiffs, and they're usually chained up, like chained around the neck, chained to the ground with a stake. They're chained up, and these weren't, and I think they weren't because they just did not expect to see another person. And I didn't know that. I thought they were chained, so I just plod along. And at this point, I didn't have no walking sticks. They made me get walking sticks. I'll tell you what. And then both of them just run instantly towards me. And at first I'm kind of like, oh, it might be okay, because normally they'll just come close and they'll bark. I've had to throw rocks at them in the past before, but they've normally come quite close and they've stayed away just barking. But it was the look on the girls' face, on their faces, and the way they ran after the dogs. That's when I realised they're not chained and the girls are scared for me. And then I see them coming. I bend down, I pick up a number of rocks, and I wait for them to get on the grass bankment, which hits the track. And then as soon as they do and I realise they're not stopping, boom, I stop throwing these rocks at them. And then all of a sudden, I'm out of rocks. And they're barking. This went on for about 2 minutes, by the way. I was fucking exhausted because I had the backpack on me still. And they were coming. They came so close that I could no longer bend down to get any rocks because they would go for my face. And I just remember keeping them like at bay, trying to keep them in front of me. The last thing I wanted was one of them to get behind me, because then I'm doubly fucked, you know. Sure. And then these girls are trying to grab this mastiff, but the mastiff's like turning around, barking and snapping at them, and they're like, oh, like screaming back, and I'm like, fucking hell. So they've got my back. They can't help with this. And then I had to fake. Like, pretend that I've got... And they were flinching. The dogs were flinching until they caught on, because it was like 2 minutes, and they're like, he's not got anything. And then it got so close, I literally had to fucking kick. Bang. Mad. Kicked it in. It hurt my foot doing it as well.
Got hit with the shin.
I mean, it was like shin and foot. It was like wrong. But I caught it, and it gave out a little yelp, and it wasn't deterred. It kept coming back. And then I kicked it again. And then I managed to bend down, throw more rocks. And this one rock that I got, it was fairly big at the beginning. The first one I threw, it hit its side and it yelped again, almost fell, because I just like shot putted it right into the side. But it just kept coming and coming.
How did they get off?
Eventually, they just got tired.
Wow.
They just got sick of it. They weren't getting to me.
Savage.
And I didn't even have time to get the rucksack off because that was heavy. And I was just fucking, I couldn't, no time to unclip. And they just, after 2 minutes.
20 kg on your back.
Yeah, I roundhouse kicked 20 kg on my back. It yelped, came back for more.
So you were still attached to the trailer?
No, that was in China.
Oh, sorry, in China.
That was the Yangtze River, no trailer, it was just a rucksack.
Mad.
So he's taking that, basically.
So
he's taking it.
If they didn't stop and I got exhausted.
But it was 2 against 1 as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2 of them.
Yeah, come on.
You're
taking one all day long, mate.
Yeah, he wins. He wins.
We'll go for an easy one now.
Okay.
An army of red ants.
Oh, God.
You were sleeping next to them in Burma and you were happy about it.
Yeah, maybe the trick is just to let them go by. Maybe, and they are going to attack me. Yeah?
My money's on the ants, mate.
I can run, right? I can run.
You can run.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, me then.
Fair.
You'll run away?
I'm running away.
Yeah.
I don't want
That's
none
fair.
of that business.
But how many are there?
An army.
100,000.
Yeah.
What's an army? What's an army of?
An army, there'll be thousands.
Yeah, let's say a few thousand.
Yeah.
3,000.
But then you're running, and you're running away from them, and you got shit.
They're still slow in the grand scheme of things.
So you
Yeah,
can
they
run,
can't
not,
catch
you
you.
can outrun an ant
You can
easily.
outrun it.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
Fair.
This
favorite.
one may stumble you in your tracks.
Okay. Yeah, nah. No chance.
That's a bear for everyone
Yeah,
watching.
No chance. That's a
Okay.
black bear as well. So
Yeah,
with
100%.
them, you can't even play dead. You have to fight for your life.
Yeah.
So
you
you have to try and scare them into
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
the one in China?
No, that's a Tibetan brown bear in China.
Different. Okay.
Slightly different.
Yeah, slightly different.
What about the Tibetan brown bear then?
Yeah, nah.
Right, same vibe then. Same vibe.
Yeah, I think you could
Keep
try
the
to
nose.
scare it off, try to warn it, make yourself aware, like make them aware that you're present, and then. But if they are gonna attack you,
They're hungry.
It would almost be like a little baby trying to fight his dad.
Yeah.
You'd be grabbing his fur like, get off me. It's not happening.
Horrendous.
Hey.
Strong opinions about this one coming up, by the way. I'm getting ready for this
Yeah,
one.
one of the four of us thinks they could take this easy,
The
hands
divisional
down.
one.
I wouldn't say
Okay.
easy, but I'd say take it.
Kangaroo.
I'm taking a kangaroo, man.
A kangaroo. Oh,
You seen the guy boxing a kangaroo, just a 1-2 in the face. and
Yes.
that
And we'll say a
never
male
mess with a man's
adult.
dog.
yeah. I think I can do the same.
Yeah.
This has been like a funny one we've gone on before.
We're saying a male adult kangaroo here.
A male adult kangaroo. I think that would be very, very fucking hard. But but your life depends on it, right? So it's
Yeah.
do or die.
Mhm.
If it's do or die, I like to think I would try to. So you'd have to avoid its claws
Yeah.
and its kicks. Fucking wild, powerful. They can literally slice you open. I
That was a good
would have to
reason.
try to get from
I'm
from behind,
Mm.
and I'd
Right.
have to grapple the son of a bitch from behind.
That BJJ, bro.
Yeah, I would. Whether I could or not, I have no idea. But
An incoming kangaroo.
yeah.
Do you think you would you take your chances?
Or run, you mean?
As
I
in,
would run if I could. Yeah, for sure.
I don't
run
think
if-
you
I
can
don't think you can
outrun
outrun
it.
a kangaroo.
No, you
Outrun
can't
kangaroo.
outrun. If it chooses to approach and you have to fight, yeah, I would just try my best to get it from behind.
do you think you're over 50% confident you would win that fight?
Charlie, put the camera on me. I'm gonna look like a right twat.
Over 50%.
Ash, please,
I'm gonna
for
give
me,
it,
for me.
I'm gonna give it a confident yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm gonna
all right.
have to.
And the yes pal.
I didn't go Muay Thai.
He's done Mongolia, bro.
You think 100% no for Hamza, right? All right, we'll keep it moving. A Mongolian eagle.
A Mongolian eagle.
That's a Pepe's, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a yes. I'm gonna give it a yes, but it's a struggle to say yes. I think it would be dependent on how it was to approach me, because I know their attack is lethal, and I think if it went from behind right into the neck, they can do damage. But I do know that they break rabbits' spines, don't they, and necks.
Yeah, they drop him from like heights.
But
and
I
stuff.
don't know if they do hunt foxes and they do hunt wolves, but I don't know if they have the power to snap a wolf's neck on approach.
Mm.
But I do know the smaller prey that they
Right.
definitely do. And so it depends where that claw, because they fly forward like that, don't they? And they try to pierce them.
Would you be able to hear it coming?
No, that's what I mean. And so
Wow.
it depends on
That's crazy.
where it hits. I think if it hits me and I'm okay, and now I'm aware that it's there,
Yeah.
it would be a case of each time it comes, you putting your arms in front, which you've got to be careful. I think what I would do, right? What I would do, because I have thought about this. You get a long time to think solo in the desert, in the outside mountains. I saw these hunting actually, you know? And I think what I would do is I would wrap a t-shirt around my wrists, because your artery's there. I would wrap that around, have my gloves on, because I had desert sandstorm gloves anyway. Cover myself as much as I could, buff, mask, and then I would just be watching it. And one of the times that it swipes down, I would grab it. Once I've got hold of it, it's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've just got its neck. I'm just
Yeah,
stamping
yeah.
on its head. It's done.
Fair enough.
Fair.
Are they the kind to like scratch out your eyes and stuff as well? Are they different kind of eagles?
Yeah, no,
go
they
for eyes?
could try. I think they would probably try to approach you from behind, go for the neck.
Mm.
They swoop down like this and grab you and then take you back up and then just, like you said, drop you.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to pick up a human, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But little kids, they've been seen trying to fly off with babies.
Yikes.
No, man.
It's been caught on camera.
That's crazy.
We've got 4 left.
Okay.
All right. Not saying they're easier or worse than what you've already seen. A pit viper.
A pit viper.
Mongolian pit viper.
Also, we've taken all of these animals from what you've verbally said in your book, so
Yeah.
you definitely know what this is.
Yeah, a pit viper. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure in my Mongolia trailer, I had gators. Do you know the gators that strap on? From
Yeah,
your,
yeah,
So
I'm sure, yeah.
they effectively snake proof your snake.
Oh,
on.
really?
So
Oh.
you could, but if it gets you and by surprise, you are fucked, especially in the middle of nowhere.
Are they venomous?
Now we're saying Bruce Buffer. It's time to go
Oh, it's time
one-on-one.
to go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would take a pit viper. Yes.
How would you take it down?
I would, if I've got my gators.
Yeah.
I've got my
on it.
gaiters and I'm just
Booting it.
Just
trampling
booting
the
the
hell
shit
out
out
of
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like the you have horses do that, don't you?
Yeah.
Zebra, I'm sure zebra.
What,
Yeah, they
kick?
can just and giraffes they
Right.
just fucking trample
Oh,
shit.
Yeah.
trample it.
yeah,
Yeah,
right,
fair.
fair.
Okay.
Awesome.
And they're slow. You can outrun one.
Oh yeah.
He designed these, by the way.
Yeah, they know these are good.
This you feared because it stalked you for a while.
Just one of them. Just one of them.
A wolf.
Yeah, you know what? They're a lot bigger than people think. They are big.
How
Their
big? How
heads
big's
are
a
like-
mastiff and how big's a wolf? Just out of curiosity.
Ooh, a big grey wolf. Some of the big ones that you find, but I don't know if you get the huge ones in Mongolia. You do get grey wolves in Mongolia, but if you look towards Canada, Alaska, everything's bigger there, right?
Yeah, it's all bigger in the US.
Then
North
they are
America.
bigger than the mastiff.
Yeah. Is a mastiff like waist height? Would you say? In terms of when that's just when it's standing.
With the fur, I would say it is. But its back is maybe.
That's waist height,
Oh
basically.
no,
Yeah.
with the fur maybe here
That's higher than
with
waist
its
height.
head. They can be big. I'd say
Damn.
here
That's
head.
pretty
It's like up to
big,
your,
man.
sorry, like up to your sternum, really.
No, that's about waist height, isn't
Oh, waist height. Okay, fair.
About here.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
fair.
about. But they get bigger than that, don't they? In Canada,
Sure.
a pack of them, no, they've got you. They've definitely got because you would just get exhausted, and they're clever. They know how to do you
They
over.
stalk you.
Yeah,
One-on-one, one wolf.
one wolf. Oh God, that would be horrific, wouldn't it?
If they get you up there, if they clamp.
Yeah, you might not survive after the fight, but who's dying first?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to.
If you die second, it counts as winning.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I think I've got it. I like to
Grapple
think.
it.
Yeah.
Depends on your strength and
Yeah,
weakness in terms of
how
like
big it is.
where on an adventure it gets you. If I was the Altai Mountains and a wolf, I reckon I've got it. If I was the Gobi Desert and it was the wolf wins.
Interesting.
Fair play.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Watch me get fucked over by every single one of them. Damn it.
All right, second last one here. A bacterial camel.
Ah, yeah.
No competition.
It's massive.
Pure muscle, aren't they?
Yeah.
Muscle. Yeah, I reckon if that wants me, that just does what it wants to me.
Good thing they're probably vegetarian.
Yeah. Yeah, you can never imagine actually getting into
Scuffle.
a fight with them, although they are temperamental. Well, they can get well moody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How do they show their like moodiness?
By being a dick to you. Yeah, I remember in the Sahara Desert in Morocco, this wasn't like a big time adventure, but yeah, there was one that was just miserable. They had to take it out of the caravan. They were just like, yeah, we can't do anything with it. I'm like, fucking hell. It's like, yeah, it's having one of those days. I'm like, so you have to leave. Yeah, it won't do anything anything we do or say.
Fair enough.
Just like, wow.
That's true.
Yeah, so there's no way you can incentivize it or like, give it some food. It's just like, no, it will like bite you. Can they spit? I think they can spit.
Yes,
too,
they
can't
spit at you.
Yeah.
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 And
Back
that
up.
comes at you fast.
Yeah. And they are bigger as well. They are
Yeah.
Bactrian camel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a few of them. They are, they're big.
Last one.
The last one, which I would argue is given the most grief because of the Coco Pops, a zebu.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the zebu are that's funny because if it was the wild yak, I would say no chance.
Domesticated one.
No, I still say no chance.
Really?
I think the zebu's got, it's just pure muscle again, isn't it?
Those
Fucking
horns.
That looks
I know,
scary.
it looks
bro.
scary.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
the devil's cow.
Okay. Well, to finish off, then I would
Yeah.
like to find out the ones you've said no to. So we have stingray, any type of bear, really, a bacterial camel, and a zebu. Which one would you fear the most?
So is that which one would I fear the most? Is the bear?
The bear,
Like,
hands
bear.
down.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
Yeah.
You literally
Alright.
can't
What
do
about
anything.
what about the one that you think best chance against? I guess with these four.
Is stingray on that list?
Yeah.
Stingray is on the
Is it? Yeah, stingray. throw in the other pile.
All right, bear, camel, and zebu.
Yeah.
The best chance against. I think. Oh shit!
I'd say zebu for you. I think that's probably.
I
got
think,
horns, though.
yeah, I'm
Horns.
thinking it's horns.
Yeah, but camels
Oh, look at
massive
these.
though.
Look at that.
I know.
Camel's huge.
It's got.
Bro, you chose the most alpha looking zebra.
Yeah, but
I'm, the way
I have to
I'm
make this a
thinking,
challenge.
yeah, is which one would exhaust quicker
Mm.
Out of what?
out of the zebu and the camel?
Oh, let's put these up.
Probably
Let's
zebu.
put these back to
The
back.
camels surfing the caravan in the desert.
Great
right?
for endurance, right?
Yeah.
They
Whereas
probably
the-
charge though, innit? They
I
probably
think
charge.
if you can get past a certain amount of charges and let it get tired where it just can no longer really be bothered to charge you because it's a bit tired,
Yeah.
then maybe there's less power in its hit.
He's tiring out.
I would get fucked up by both, but I would probably choose to try the zebu.
All right.
Zebu, fair
We'll
Yeah.
take that.
Awesome.
We'll take that. And Black Bear's just not
The
having it. Just not having it.
Yeah, I think that's the that's just
Look at
something
that.
about yeah.
Bro, they're insane.
Like
That's
you
coked
can't.
up.
I think
Cocaine bear.
I think the polar bear is the most savage,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
can't outswim it. You can't outrun it.
Yeah.
They're massive.
You can't hide from it.
They look the most friendly though.
Yeah,
I
they do.
know.
And they look
do.
and they're even bigger as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they're huge.
And they are the ultimate predator, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're made to kill.
Yeah.
There was a story on Joe Rogan about this guy who, essentially, him and his friends were in Antarctica, and
Yeah.
there was a polar bear on like another island, and essentially they saw the polar bear saw these guys,
Yeah.
swam over from that island. There's nothing they can do. He just watched everyone die, like
Oh,
everyone get
shit.
killed.
Jesus.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do, bro.
It's
What are you meant to do?
Nothing.
Fucking
You
hell.
pray. That's it.
Because you're on ice and water, you got no choice.
Yeah, you're just done.
I remember Mike. Do you know Mike Horn? Probably not. He's
Was that,
more
is that the
ma-
one you said circumnavigated
Yeah.
the globe? Yeah.
Yeah, via both poles.
Yes.
No motorized vehicle whatsoever. Well, he's done crazy adventures. He has, and one of them was he was. I think he was trying to get to the North Pole in the winter, where it's like permanently dark, which is crazy to do. And he woke up, or his friend woke up with Mike Horn's hand over his mouth. Turns to Mike, and Mike is covering his own mouth, saying, "Shh." And there was a polar bear sat on Mike Horn's legs from outside of the tent whilst it was rummaging through his sledge. And he was just like, "Don't breathe, don't say anything." And then they let it go through the sleigh, which that was their life support vehicle for when they were out there, you know.
Oh my god.
Their lifeline, should I say. And it just eventually just drifted. Imagine waking up to that. You know, there's a polar bear sat on there.
Well,
Darkness as well. Complete
Yeah.
darkness.
Oh,
I don't even want to imagine that.
well, one final question to
Yes.
to finish off the episode here, and thank you for coming on. By the way,
Thanks
it's been
for
a
having me.
fantastic
It's
one.
been great fun.
It's been amazing.
Great
Absolutely.
conversation. I've loved
Wonderful. Obviously, we're called Atypical, right? We
Yeah.
like to take that mentality into what we do and being different and things like that. So, how important do you think it is to be different? You know, to take an atypical view on life, to be atypical versus society in how you approach things, whatever facet it is or thing that you take in life.
Yeah, look, I think you can go about it both ways. There's no right or wrong. But me personally, I think if you want to do some groundbreaking stuff, if you want to sort of leave a legacy, or for the rest of the people, or for your close-knit friends, you know, community, family, whatnot, I think you've got to really think outside the box, because a lot of things have been done. There's always someone who has said something before you've said it, done something before you've done it, and I think to really stand out, you've got to get out of that way of thinking, which is the typical sort of matrix way of thinking, if you like, of standard society of what you should be doing. You know, after school, you go here, you get a job, you get a mortgage, you get married, you have kids. That's all good and great, but what can you do to really fulfill your life? And that, for me, is important. It's down to fulfillment first and foremost. You know, what can you do to feel fulfilled? And I think a lot of people are lost. And I think without a fulfilling life, that's when you suffer more mentally, right? Because there's always something out there that people can do or feel they should do or want to do, but they just don't spend time looking at what it is that they want, that they need. They spend too much focusing on what they should be doing, what their parents want them to do, for example, you know. Whereas I think with that, you grow resentment, you grow bitter, potentially. But then there's the flip side of that, and I know people who are doing absolutely nothing, but they're super content, and that is like good for you, because why not? There is that side too, and if anything, I probably hold a little bit of envy towards that, because I'd love to just do nothing, be as happy as I am. But I've got that attitude where I have to strive and push, and but I do think we all have. I think we've all got that. I think we've all got that sort of strive and that ambition, and that I wonder if I was to do this, or I wonder what would happen if I, and it could be anything. I don't mean adventure. I just mean a career that you're trying to pursue. And so, yeah, that's a long-winded answer, isn't it?
Not at all. That's beautiful.
But,
That was perfect.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Ash, for coming on. That was a great episode. Our first guest, so a big milestone for us.
Great,
Hopefully-
an honour to be your first guest. I love it.
I think you were the first name on our guest doc as well that we have on the people who want to come on.
Yeah.
So when we
Oh,
crossed that off
nice.
a couple of weeks ago, it was a pretty cool experience.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
You manifested it.
Absolutely. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Again, as always, link trees in the description at the Atypical Podcast on all our social platforms pretty much. Leave a comment, leave a like, let us know if you enjoyed it, and let us know what guests you want on next. And of course, all of Ash's links to his book, website, everything else will be in the description. So check it out. And yeah, it's been the Atypical Podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.
Wicked.